Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions and argumentation in that direction. Peace and respect to our dying son. Welcome. Okay, so today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Not too different. I'm going to create an argument live. So yeah, it's going to be a bit clumsy. That's to be expected. Where's the option where it's just the shared screen? What happened to that option? Could have sworn I used to have that option. Oh well. Okay, so there's observations to be made about the words used in the Ten Commandments, and both sets of them. So no different. This argument will still apply. I don't know how well the microphone's going to pick up, because I have it kind of in the way of the keyboard. We got somebody backstage. Peace and respect. Welcome, Joel. Speak and ye shall be heard.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. That's
Awesome.
4x5. You're coming through 4x5. Good enough.
Yeah. Well, very good. All right. Well, at least the volume's. Oh my gosh! Now I'm forgetting. First one's quality. Second one's volume. Right?
On what?
All the telecom numbers.
Oh yeah, I know you were talking about telecom numbers, but which numbers on which screen, and do you have like a booster device, or how does this work?
No. The 5x5 means good quality, good volume.
Right.
4x5. I forget which category is which. Is all. I'm being silly.
Oh well, I meant the volume is good enough, and the quality is not perfect.
Okay. So
it's a little bit. It's hard to describe. We don't have a good language for this. So it's it's like I'm picking up just a little bit of background noise when you're speaking, and also it's not quite roboting, but it's leaning in that direction, if you will.
Echo cancellation is on.
Why would you normally have an echo if you didn't use that?
I don't know. I just did adjust volume automatically. Is this any better?
It was okay to start. It's a little bit better now. We'll find out.
All right. Well, if it's annoying, let me know. I can switch devices again, because I am on my cell phone.
Well, until the Lord showed me love, I found everything annoying. So I'm doing a lot better than I used to.
All right. So live argument.
Yeah. A live presentation of the formation of an argument. So I'm going to switch screens. I won't be able to see the StreamYard screen. That's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? While I'm over here, and I'm not sure. You tell me how the mic's picking. Is the mic still picking up okay, right, like that?
I hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So some observations about the 10. So here's how I do this. If in prayer I'm shown something, right, and this was not shown to me recently. I'm just now writing it down. I've argued this for years, but have never written it down before. Observations about the 10 Commandments. So I'm gonna just like write some bullet points, and then I'll develop an argument from the bullet points. So here's one of the bullet points. The quotation in the text, "Thou shalt not." Thou shalt not is actually a really interesting phrase. You know what I'm talking about when I say "thou shalt not," of course, Joel.
It brings up memories of doing ISO certifications where may and shall and won't and can't all had very, very specific meanings. Yes.
Great. Let's go over those, and we can always erase them later. You said will, and what does will mean?
That you basically voluntarily will do something. I guess is the distinction. It's been a while too. It's been over 20 years since I did that. Hang on, I'm old.
Okay. And what were the other two you'd said there? Do you
Oh,
recall?
there was like a dozen. Shall and can, can't.
Well, let's do them one at a time. Hold on. Let's
Yeah.
not get ahead of ourselves here. Okay, shall.
Yep.
How is shall different from will?
It's involuntary. It's like you will do it. You shall do it.
Involuntary.
Hmm.
Okay. And let's give just one more, just to try to be, say we're not
Uh,
being biased here.
it makes me want to bring up the ISO standards because it's all very well delineated. But can and can't was common. What was the other one? Oh, come on.
Well, let's do can just because you said it next.
Yeah.
What's can? So
They.
if will is voluntary action, shall is involuntary action, can is
If I remember correctly, it's like a basically like an optional. Will is more. It's mandatory, but it's well that doesn't make sense. Oxymoronic. It's something that
how,
you will
how
do
about
that's optional.
how about the okay? What do you mean by that?
Trying to remember.
It's hard in a
Um,
lot of our language is not great for this kind of conversation. It's just not.
well, and that's why the International Standards Organization made standards of it, precisely for this reason. But so
I'll buy that
basically,
for $1.
uh, it's like following a flow chart where you have to do a certain step, but there's like multiple steps. That makes sense. So you will do something, but you can like there's like a range of options. I guess it's not 100% mandatory. Versus can you don't have to do it. If that makes sense.
How about this? How about if I write it like this? Will means a compulsory action for a determined result.
It's potentially confusing, but sounds okay.
Shall would be thought of as involuntary, like thou shalt breathe.
Right. Yeah, you have no
Right.
choice. You shall do this. You
That, that,
shall clean
thou
your
shalt
titrator before. Yeah.
thou shalt metabolize food. How about that? Like it's
There
just
you
going to
go.
happen. It's involuntary. And let's go back down to can.
Well,
What
that's if you
what does
eat.
can mean? So
Um,
then
can is like a it's something you don't have to do. You can clean the floor or something like that. If you're trying to, you know, if you're trying to do something, because I did this for chemical department.
yes, you do this for chemicals. Yes, it's true.
So you don't need to clean the floor before set up a titrator or something or some sort of measuring device. I mean,
Okay,
you can because you might spill it and make a big mess, whatever. But especially if you mix the wrong chemicals on the floor, bad things can happen. So,
sure.
but it's not like 100%. It's not part of the actual standard operating procedure. It's like a
Right.
it's like a suggestion. You can do this. You can clean
When
this.
you say that, I'm reminded of hazmat secondary containment.
There you go.
For some things, secondary containment is highly recommended for
Right.
chemical reactions or avoiding certain chemical reactions, and
Right.
in other situations, it's just not.
And if you wanted to be very precise with this, which I think you are, again, the
Of course,
ISO cert, I'm sure it's free online if you want to do a quick web search, has all this. They probably have way more information than you'll want, but yeah.
well, I don't need that much actually,
Okay.
because I'm speaking about the intent of authorship, or at least plausible intent of authorship. Rather, peace and respect. Good morning, the Christian Carpenter. Um, I'm speaking more to that and how the language is used and how words were translated. So actually, what you've already done here in will, shall, and can is sufficient.
Okay.
That should do it. That should do
Very
it.
good.
All right. So everyone's had a chance to read that. I'm gonna reduce it a little bit here and kind of set it aside for now. All right. So we'll leave that as a note and go on with it. All right.
It's one of the caveat. If you did want more accuracy, then there is resources out there for international resources for definitions of such.
Right. All right. So here's the example that I normally give in this. Joel, since that's your name, thou shalt not do something. Okay, as an example. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to make the example of thou shalt not kick me from my own YouTube channel. Okay, now what did I mean by that? What would that mean?
That I can't kick you from your channel.
That you can't.
That I'm forbidden to. Yeah.
I'm forbidding you? Am I?
Yeah, that's what shall not means.
Oh, see, but go ahead and kick me. I'm waiting.
Well, that's part of the two-part, I guess, answer is that I can't if I wanted to.
Okay, so actually, it's a statement of inability.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure how many ends in inability.
I think one.
I can't. I don't know. Let's do it with one just because it looks better. Yeah, I got a red line, so you must be correct. Okay, so that's a 1L2. Yeah, it's still objecting. You're right. Oh, there you go. Inability. A statement of inability. Okay, now is there anything in thou shalt not that indicates that as a statement of inability I'm using the phrase thou shalt not incorrectly?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Okay, let's do it the other way.
It's a combination in my mind of you're determining that I shouldn't do something that I actually can't do, basically.
Right. Well, how about if I write this? Joel, thou shalt not kick me off your channel.
See, again, that's your demand that I don't do it, but technically I could if I wanted.
Right. So that's
yeah.
That's like a claim of it's like a claim of righteousness. If you can live with that.
I would use the word demand of some sort, but
it's a demand of what?
Either so it's like a demand of your will, commandment, order, demand of obedience. There you go.
That sounds good. I like that. I like that. That's a good way to say it. It's a demand of obedience. In other words, a commandment. Like you said, that's one of the words that fits there.
I like order.
Okay. And again, there is nothing wrong with the phrase "thou shalt not" as a demand of obedience. That works just fine.
Right.
Right.
But
okay.
I think as you're already highlighting, this is where that ISO differentiation comes in: shall versus can't or won't. This is where that difference is. Shall not means you cannot, no matter what. So if you can technically do it, but you're not supposed to, then you're supposed to, I think you're supposed to say something like will not or should not.
Well, I think it's really dependent on the originating language, the language you're translating it into, and of course any presuppositions that would add into that.
Well, again, that's why that ISO thing makes so much money, because they supposedly did all that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I hope they make just a buttload of money, and I hope they tithe.
Yes. They're very expensive.
Yeah. I hope they give back to their community as well. That would be a benevolent act, which I would appreciate.
They taught me how to cheat.
What's that?
They taught me how to cheat is the best I got back. So,
They taught you how to cheat?
well, not
What does
technically,
that
just
mean?
how to get the certification more easily. I can share the story if you want, but I don't want
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
distract you
Share
guys
us.
here.
No, no, no. Share a story. You're not going to distract me. I've got stuff written down here. I can always just read
Okay.
it again.
Okay. Well, basically, yeah, it took like a year to get our because we were the first. This is like 20 something years or 25 years ago almost now. We were the first uh, department to get the certification in like the entire industry, right? I was doing the gas chemical
Oh
services for
yeah.
Texas Instruments, the microchip field, yeah. And like nobody else had ever done this. And it took like a year for us to get to the first audits because we had like the first because we spent I don't know 250 something plus different SOPs. We had a giant couple of manuals. I mean we spent a lot of effort to try to get the certification and codify every little stupid thing that you could do in making microchips, right?
Right.
And we got like two major dings and like I don't know 3 or 4 minor dings, and then just which you can't have any dings, and then a bunch of recommendations. And finally, I talked to one of the auditors, and he explained it to me. He just flat said, "Look, we don't care what you do. We don't know what's safe or not safe in your industry. All we care about is that you do what you say you're going to do."
Yep.
And so the next
I remember that
certification,
because I was in
yeah.
hazmat at the same time you were doing that. I remember when that first started.
Yeah, no, see, and I was one of the first responder hazmat hazwhopper dudes too. So I was doing all those stuff.
Has
Yeah, so
whopper.
it was yeah. You
I
remember
remember
that?
that term.
Yeah, that was a nightmare. But yeah, he said as long as you do what you say you do, and we mark that we watch you do it, then you're good. So our next the year after that, our next audit thing we went from like 250 different. And when I'm talking about each SOP, which was ranged from 1 to 20 pages each. So we went from like these two giant manuals to like a really thin manual.
And for everyone who doesn't know, an SOP is a standard operating procedure.
Correct. So we severely summarized it and passed.
Yeah, it's all about having a plan and then following
Mm,
that plan, because
right.
the oversight powers that be did not want to know everything that every industry needs to know and what
Right.
procedure they should follow. They were just encouraging, forcing people to think about it and then follow what they'd said and then refine it as time went on. That's all they were really doing there. So,
Right. The catch, I guess, or the mentality difference is that so they're a standards company. They just care that you follow your standard, so that whenever they give you their label, ISO certified, then that's telling all of your customers and other businesses that you followed their procedures that they followed from you. If you miss procedures and if you're doing anything unsafe and you get hurt, that's a different department.
right. And was
ISO
that
doesn't care if you, yeah.
my memory betrays me? Was that part of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health? Was that NIOSH that was? Were they under NIOSH or were they
No,
independent?
yeah, it was just some international thing. ISO. There's like 9002. There's like 10,002. Now there's all these different standards, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's just an international standard. Whatever.
yeah.
You're
You know,
reminding me of OSHA.
in my mind, well, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is yet another organization.
Yes.
But it seems like it would fall under NIOSH or OSHA. It seems like it would, but maybe not. And maybe it's
Well,
independent, like you
well,
say.
OSHA's even easier because they don't care what you do. They only care that you do what they say. That's all.
Yeah,
They
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 have
write
their
their
own
own,
demands. Yeah.
right, their own shells.
Hmm.
Shall
Yeah, they
that?
have their own set of shalls, like commandments.
Yes.
Yeah. So OSHA has commandments, whereas ISO has more like should statements.
Yes. But
Yeah.
like I try to bring the only reason I bring up they are very precise on the language.
Yeah. Well, you have to, you
Hmm.
know, for reasons of legality, you have to be precise in your language. That's
Well,
why there's a whole separate proprietary language for law.
Right. Well, and I think even for your like your purposes here, you're trying to be precise with your language, interpreting the biblical commandments, if I'm understanding.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You are correct.
All right.
Okay, so one of the bullet points here, an observation that I was shown in prayer that nobody seems to notice. I'm serious, man. It just shocks me that nobody talks about this. I never heard a preacher. I never heard a theologian. William Lane Craig does not talk about this stuff. Nobody.
That's why many of us love your channel, sir.
Well, you can't blame me for this because I had no interest. I just had no interest in it. It's really interesting once it was shown to me. It's super interesting. But I didn't have interest in it to start with, and until it was shown to me, I wouldn't even have looked into these things. Okay, so there's a claim in the Bible. I have a tendency to drag and leave my finger on the capitalization button, and leave it there too long. And I can't seem to break that habit.
Would you say you had a revelation?
I am an old man who dreamt a dream. Nice. And it was revelatory, and I think that since the young men having vision and the old men dreaming dreams is part of a minor sign of the times. I mean, if all that is true, we are starting into those days. I'm convinced of it.
I believe it's in the book of Joel as well, that prophecy.
Funny you should be here and I mentioned that. Peace and respect for Robert X. Welcome. Thank you so much for dropping by at least. Hey guys, remember to, algorithms are beings. Beings need love. Please show the algorithm some love. And I know that's mincing of terms, and I do that to make people think about what I just said and say that I was wrong. But anyway, okay, so the Bible makes a claim. We got somebody new backstage. Let's check out who that is. We have one Goddess Athena.
Hello.
¿Cómo está, señor?
Sto bene, tu? Solo italiano.
He's gonna answer in Italian. Close enough.
Sì.
I am well. Thank you for asking me.
Che stai facendo qua? Che sta succedendo? Okay, I'll stop with the Italians.
I never got to learn Italian, even though my family is, some 50%. Too bad.
What's the matter for you, Stugats?
Yeah, I know. And Menage Americanos. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Is there no way for me to bring up... Yes, full screen layout. There we go. Sorry, I'm only taking down your pictures. I'm not taking down you.
You might want to take off Downey. There you go.
Yep. I got rid of that. I know things like that bother you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I recognize your voice, but I forget your name, man.
Midnight Sparkle.
Midnight? That's your name?
Well, my online
not birth-given name.
Do you want me to dox myself?
Yes, please fully dox yourself right here and now. That would be awesome.
So I was going to ask you, man, if you're familiar with the, I guess, correct denunciation, so to say, of these different types of action verbs. The shalls, the wills, the cans.
Are you asking me or Richard?
Yes, sir.
He's speaking to you.
I already asked Richard.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, the first part of Richard's exercise tonight was trying to codify and clarify, I think, these action verbs to better understand how they correlate, with biblical text, with multiple languages. And so, since you are also familiar with different languages, is there some better ways of looking at what he's already written down, for example?
Let's see. Thou shalt not, which obviously means you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do what I'm about to tell you. Like thou shalt not. Okay. Will. involuntary act. Oh wait, hold on. Wouldn't will be voluntary act? Shall compulsory action for a determined result? Can voluntary act? Jewel, thou shalt not kick me from my own channel. I don't think Jewel has that power, so you don't
You're
have to
right.
worry.
It's the multiple meaning of shall not, right?
Equals statement of inability. Jewel, thou shalt not kick me off your channel equals demand of obedience commandment. Claim only Yahweh, or I guess I pronounced it. I think that's how I usually see it
Close
pronounced.
enough.
Can condemn and permanently end a life. I mean, the claim is wrong. Considering I could kill you right now and end your life, unless you mean
Oh,
spiritual life.
no, let's talk about that. Now, let's ignore for now whether or not those ascended, perfected, or restored into heaven have a physical self or not. Let's just ignore that because it's really not the point. But there's a claim in the Bible saying, "Fear not him who can blah blah take your life, but fear him who can end your life." And like the idea of condemnation.
I always thought that it meant the difference between physical and spiritual life, but yeah.
A person could take it that way, but I think I can make reasonable argumentation that vessel is universally used in the text to mean your body, and then the claim of resurrection and vivification says you'll be given a perfect vessel,
Well,
which means a perfect flesh.
hey Richard,
Ooh.
like I just thought you said, "Fear not the man who could take your." I don't know what you said, man, but fear not the man who could take your life. Fear the man who could end it.
Yes, it can take it permanently. Yeah, that's close enough. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right.
What about it?
But here's the thing. Like when you say I'm gonna take your life, people usually think that you mean you're gonna kill them. But when you really think about it, take your life could have like a double or like a triple meaning. I'm gonna take your life, could also mean that you're gonna own them as slaves, or or do something that that will make their life harder to live or easier. I don't know. It's just take seems to have like multiple meanings, and and is the one who I would say is more like one meaning. Where I'm gonna end your life. Actually, no. End your life could also be taken in many ways, because if you say you're gonna end somebody's life, it means you're going to make it so his life has no meaning anymore. No one likes him, and he can't really find anything, and he falls into a deep depression.
Are you
So,
trying
yeah,
to say that? Are you trying to say that context matters?
Yes. Yes, I do.
It's not the first time I've heard that claim made.
Hey, I'm not Jill, okay? I'm not Jill. Okay, I know you were going there, but fuck you, Richard.
I was not going to. I was not. You are wrong, sir.
Okay, fair enough. That's my bad.
He doesn't have that much. He doesn't get that much free rent in my head.
Fair enough.
Okay, so the text claims it's speaking of a person's fear of God over their fear of Satan, is the context there. And it says, don't fear him who can like ruin your life now. Don't even worry about that. Worry about him who could restore you to heaven or send you to hell, which is not a Satan thing, right? Satan doesn't get to make that decision. That's the judgment seat. That's in reference.
I honestly feel so bad for Satan. He got the baddest
What?
rap in the world.
We got to talk about that sometime. Okay, maybe not right now. Okay, so the way that I understand that part of it, and anyone's welcome to argue, is a life can be restored in heaven. That is, we get the dead folks back, right? So, to end a life means that to end a life means that they won't be restored.
Right. So the biblical context is something that talks about how every person. How's it talking about the first death?
Mm-hmm.
There's a Bible verse about it.
Yes, there is. There's a Bible verse about the second death as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first death and second death. And the second death would do a person no harm if they believe and follow Christ. They will not.
Names in the book of the Lamb.
Right. If your name is in the book of the if your name is in the book of life of the Lamb, or however you want to say that, those whose names are written down, that is, they're guaranteed a spot in heaven. They will not suffer the second death. There you go. Right. Okay. So to end a life, they have to not be restored biblically. Right. So if it's true. Let me just ask it as a question, both of you, please, if you would chime in. Can I overpower God and kill someone?
I mean, can you
the first death, maybe?
Well, wait, can you overpower God and kill someone? I'm pretty sure.
Can I permanently end a life?
I mean,
no. I mean, you can temporarily end a life.
Well, God damn it! This is getting into the weeds of things or context.
I love the weeds.
Semantics or whatever.
You're right. Yes, that's the point.
This is just. I mean, legally, I guess. Yeah, you can come to my house and stab me to death. I mean, I'd be dead. Whether I find myself in heaven or hell, or in a black abyss. It remains to be determined. I don't know. I don't know what happens after death. Like, hey, you know what, Richard?
No. Wait. We're doing an internal critique here. I'm not asking anyone what they know the reality to be.
Yeah, I mean, his question was predicated or caveat, however you want to put it, on the premise if he could override God, quote unquote.
Okay, then I would say is that you can destroy the vessel, but God is the only one who can destroy the soul. Does that make sense, or?
No, it's perfect, lovely. No, that's lovely. It's great.
I think the point is God can resurrect us, and we can't resurrect people that we kill. So we can only temporarily kill people, apparently.
Well, okay, internal critique, yes. Like you kill somebody, they're dead until they're resurrected.
Exactly.
Although it is kind of weird that our vessel decomposes after we die. You would think God will find a way to like preserve it underground, so we'd have a body to go back to. It's like. What are you doing?
Well, maybe that's why there's such an impressive coffin industry. I don't know.
Trust me, that does not preserve bodies.
That's good.
But just like 23andMe, you can find out your entire genome. They could track all of it. They only do major points of it for that test, but they could track all of it. And what does that mean? That means everyone's genetics, whoever preceded you in your family, is stored in you. They are literally not lost.
That goes more into the realm of genetic memory, and whether that's actually a thing. It's being studied, but some people consider it pseudoscience. I don't know. It's interesting, so I'm not going to take right away.
Let's say you took Richard and his sister Wendy, right? And you sorted out what is from mom and what is from dad, right? And you take away all of dad, what do you have left? All of mom. So the genetic code for mom is in me and my siblings.
Yes.
Well, only in immediate family. If you've heard of finite state machines, it's actually pretty easy. You just, like you just described, you kind of just eliminate what the changes were. But to go beyond your parents, you need your grandparents, and then the parents. So if you've got any missing links in that chain of the ancestry, for example, my dad, before he passed away, spent his last few years just diving deep into genealogy, and he spent years getting books and stuff. He was trying to get ready to travel, and so he had all these. He had like 4 or 5 different paid databases that he'd try to get me into as well. And he would show me. I was allegedly, and I might be a little wrong, but if I remember correctly, that I'm supposedly Adam's 58th great grandson, and he had it all lined out, the tree and everything like that. And the branches get longer and longer, of course, as you go before Noah. And so, but to know that, you have to know all of the ancestors for the ancestors. Yeah, I got a little bit of royalty, but not a lot. But still, the point is that so even the Human Genome Project, they did their historic genetic trace project, showing where humanity traveled from East Africa to the rest of the world. That also required finding those steps, those ladders, whatever you want to call it, those keys. So it's not like our genome history is stored in. It's like, so for me to Adam is not in my genome. It's from step by step, by generation by generation.
Anyone else hungry?
Yeah.
Always.
I had a big can of fruit. I'm good.
Nice.
I think Richard's trying to make a point. I think.
Yeah, his point is that I'm right.
I think he's trying to dissect the 10 Commandments.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. You can use any of them this way, and it works. So it's not just, oh, that was the wrong button. Just erased a bunch of stuff I didn't mean to. Oh, well, we'll live with it. Our brains aren't that bad.
You want to try Control Z?
I'm not going to now.
Okay.
But I'll consider that in the future.
It might undo it for you.
Permanently ending a life. What do you think of that last statement there?
Yeah, makes sense. That's, well, again, with that caveat of the resurrection, being able to be resurrected.
Claim only Yahweh can condemn you and permanently end the life. Oh, I added the you. Thereby, thou shalt not kill in whatever way would more consistently be read as you are incapable of overpowering God and permanently ending a life.
What do you think, Midnight?
I still stick with what I said, that you could that you could destroy the vessel but not the soul. Only God can do that. Mine is more succinct.
Yeah. No, you're wording it just fine. I'm trying to overstate it. Peace and respect, John Hudson. Also, Domenico. I'm not sure I've seen Namaskar. And fellow aware beings. Welcome. I don't recall, Domenico, seeing you on this channel before. I think I saw you somewhere else. Remind me, if you would, where that would have been, where you and I, our paths crossed before. Okay,
Richard?
Yeah.
This is where I get that dual meaning again for the shalt not.
Mm-hmm.
Where I can't boot you off your own channel. So for me, that commandment, the first, and it's not the first commandment, it says, I forget which was the third or something like that. Always read as you shall not murder. So even though you can't permanently take a life, as you're talking about, you can still commit the act of murder.
Well, certainly people have gone through a lot of trouble in apologetics to justify and make sense their view of the text from within the paradigm they've accepted. A lot of ink has been spilled. A lot of ink has been spilled, right?
Well, yeah. Probably for every single verse in the entire Bible, yes.
I'm sure. Especially the ones that are more controversial and need explanation. Yeah. So, But it's funny to me that, okay, if I say angels are not taken to marriage, right? That is that they don't sign a contract. There is no governing body that agrees. There are no tests. There's nothing like that in heaven. And also, apparently, there's no claim ever of an angel owning a certain thing. So it's communism, right? There's
they're mandatory servants or slaves, right?
Well, there's angels that have certain jobs. I could say Michael has the keys to hell. Okay, I can say something like that, but it doesn't. It never like means that, even though he maintains them, that they're like his in property. Like he could rid up a bill of sale and sell them to God, and say somebody else take over. It's not like that.
Okay.
And I might have heard a bing. I did hear a bing. Oh, Tersini. Yeah. Peace and respect and welcome.
Hello.
Take the floor for a minute. Talk a little bit about what you do, where you've been, what you've seen, things that interest you.
Hey, Richard. Hey, guys.
Hello.
I just like sharing information, whether I channel it or hear what other people share. So this is an interesting topic, talking about biblical stories.
Right on.
I'm hearing a voice, but I wasn't understanding it.
Okay. Maybe I'll turn it up louder. Can you hear me now?
See what I can do with his mic settings.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to crank him up a little bit.
Thanks, Richard.
Sure. I'm getting a little... Okay, don't mess with it while I'm messing with it.
Sorry.
Okay, you sound pretty good now. Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Can you hear me better now, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's okay. All right. So this is the sort of thing you find interesting. Me too. Mm-hmm. Me too. And it's not to be a curmudgeon or I'm not doing this just to be a contrarian or just to be argumentative, but I think these things are really important and impactful. Like if I say angels have no apparent, although each of them, of course, in heaven, enjoying heaven in whatever way, they don't seem to have ownership of things, right? So it seems they use things, but they don't have ownership of things. So if in heaven there's no such thing as ownership, then there's no such thing as being covetous. If that made sense? Or if in heaven life can be restored, it doesn't matter what we do to each other here. That's irrelevant if we kill each other in wars, or if you kill someone in defense of your household. That doesn't matter. They could still go to heaven and be restored. You literally cannot kill them. You cannot covet something. There's no marriage in heaven, so you can't covet someone's spouse because they don't have one, and on like that throughout the commandments.
So you're trying to make the argument that we cannot sin even if we wanted to in heaven.
Yes.
Nice.
That these things, these ideas of sin don't work in heaven.
Right.
Would that open up the question, what is sin at that point, Richard?
Sin is missing some mark.
Okay, so if you're
That's what I understand sin to mean.
So if you're encasing
God.
So if you're encased into a mortal form, would that not be classified as sin?
Okay, explain to me why it would be sin.
If we're spiritual beings playing a mortal game, then we use words like in life opposed to my life. If you're encased in the concept called life, breath of life, prana, chi, well, it's not even chi, but in this case it would be prana or spirit. So if we're encased in these forms, now we play with our senses. So hence, be in the world but not of it. Be in the vessel but not of it. So in this case, these angels, whatever we want to call them, if they're not having to worry about all the tangible things you have to do when you're in the mortal form, you got to feed the damn thing, you got to shelter the damn thing. This is why the human form is called the beast form. And then, of course, we have all these written works, usually a dumbed-down version, but it's nevertheless written work. So now we're going to try to use our senses to comprehend something beyond the senses.
Right,
So
but don't we do that now?
yes, we do. I'm doing it right now. Yes, this is the game that we're playing with each other.
Right. Right. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't see anything. Okay, a person can be in the world and in the flesh, and they
Yes.
can act in the flesh. But if they get the right information and they're persuaded the right direction, as you obviously have been, then they can rise to a higher level and start thinking of the spiritual things in life, the existential things, right? So everyone has that option whether they use it or not.
True.
So the flesh does not hold us back. Our weakness and our situation and living in sin holds us back. So there being no sin in heaven, I don't see why flesh would be detrimental.
Why you couldn't bring your flesh up into those higher atmospheres.
Okay, well that's an assertion.
Mm-hmm. That's why some people, when they talk about being taken up in the spirit, they're not being taken up in the flesh.
Right, I understand that. But there's examples of the opposite as well.
Unless you've experienced it, yes. More times we're going to parrot information that's been written down, unless you have experienced it or observed it. When you're in the physical, you're experiencing, but you can also be the observer in the spiritual realm.
Certainly true. Certainly true. But my point is, what of Enosh and Elijah? For Enosh was no more, and he walked with God, meaning they didn't even have something to bury. And the same with Elijah. Elijah ascends into the heavens in a whirlwind. He doesn't come back.
That was a fiery chariot.
Same thing. It really is the same thing. I'm being a little bit lazy there, not looking up the words, but yes. So to ascend in a chariot or a whirlwind or be taken up, and there's nothing left for them to bury. You'll never find a story of their burial because there isn't one, because they don't get buried. There is no flesh.
True.
The Lord takes the flesh and all into the air. So we have examples of both. Go ahead.
Oh, just to be technical and picky, because I know you love it. Just as a reminder, Elijah did drop his mantle or his scarf or something, and Elijah picked it up.
Yeah,
carried it.
Yeah. So a mantle is like an overcoat, something like a poncho, something like that.
I'm sure there's some deep meaning in there somewhere too.
Oh, yes, of course. They moved my buttons on me in StreamYard, and it takes me a second to find the full screen. Okay, so go ahead.
So if I may, what I'm taking it from so far from the conversation is that here in the earthly realm, whatever you call it, we can choose to disobey God, that's sin. But in heaven, even if we wanted to disobey God, we mentally or physically can't do it because the things that we're existing to sin with don't exist anymore, basically.
That's what I'm seeing here.
Yeah. You can't murder, you can't covet, you can't steal, because you have everything.
So what I'm saying is, I can read this as simultaneously a declaration of inability and also a description of the situation of heaven.
Interesting.
I mean, it's obvious to me that grace is extended for ignorance, right? Throughout the stories. How many times does God forgive Israel, for instance? Just as a really obvious one. And that upon ascension, enlightenment, vivification, perfection, quickening, however you want to say that, in which case we would be very different from how we are right now, right? So bearing those things in mind, it seems to me that there's things here that just wouldn't apply in heaven, like the idea of sinning, missing the mark of God, the bullseye that He established, we wouldn't be missing in heaven.
Standard. Most translations, Romans 3:28, is it? All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Mm-hmm. Don't even know how that F got there.
Okay, Richard, I have a quick question for you. Like, why are you making this presentation? Are you presenting it at a panel somewhere, or is it just for your your personal project or something, or both? I don't know.
Um, personal project or some panel somewhere. I don't know what some panel somewhere means.
Okay, what? Okay, I'll just rephrase.
You guys are the panel.
Well, yes. Okay, so I'll just ask a better. Just ask it more concise. Why are you making this PowerPoint presentation?
Oh, I'm standardizing these arguments and refining them through my peer group, you guys, so that I'm sure that the wording is clear because my brain is one peculiar brain and no kind of a survey, right? But I want as many people to understand these things as possible. So it's like, and I want good argumentation, and I found that people don't know how to argue.
That's an understatement. I'm not. I'll be the first to say I suck at arguing.
So in an effort to help the community learn to argue better, and that's kind of an overview of it, structured syllogisms standardized and made easy to understand so that actual argumentation or changing of minds can happen, right? Hopefully both, good argument and changing of minds. So like in this one, premise 1 is presented, this one premise 2 presented, then both premises and the conclusion. Because I've presented this, and people have a tendency to say all kinds of things that aren't related to the claim in the syllogism. And I don't know why people do that, so I'm trying to show people how to not do that. I'll give you an example, not naming any names. Intelligent adult men. When I said mankind on an earth is the only creature of God's creation that goes through the great tribulation and washes their clothes in the blood of the Lamb. Actually, that isn't the one I presented. Let me find the actual one I presented. Let's see, Israel. Here we go. When I said mankind is part of the creation of God and is finished when in heaven God rests on the Sabbath from his finished creation, God's Sabbath rest begins when mankind is in heaven. I had an intelligent, honest person say to me, I thought we took our rest in Christ. Well, that has nothing to do with this syllogism now, does it? Like, where is Christ mentioned here? Well, he's not. Right? And where do we find the rest of the Sabbath? Also, no claim of that. It's just not the topic.
Well, if I may, Richard, just right before you said that, I was instantly reminded of Christ's sermon about the sheep and the goats, where he's talking about, he spreads the nations, and the goats, were the fake Christians that didn't help the needy, that didn't help the poor, didn't go to visit in prisons, and
Sure.
they were cast out into hell. He said the way you treat the least of these is the way you treated me. Well, the sheep, the righteous, the ones that did follow and obey, that did take care of others as we would ourselves or as the Lord. He said, he basically was thankful and said, enter into your rest, prepared for you from the foundations of the world. So that's the rest. So there is all kinds of correlations.
Right. I find that to be true.
So that's how Christ is our rest. That's how he's the finisher of our faith. It's just, I don't know, it all makes sense in one big giant connected way, I think.
It does, but I'm trying to avoid free association. And I'm not saying it's not interesting. It's super interesting that you say you could say Sabbath, comma, rest, comma, Christ, comma, truth, comma.
Sure. All the different rests.
Objectivity, comma, God, comma, heaven, comma. Okay, I mean, there's a lot to talk about there. You know?
No, I get you.
Now, does one follow from the last one? Absolutely. Absolutely, all those follow. That's great. But you can never get to what Sabbath means if we just keep doing associations and moving so fast.
Yeah.
So the entire idea of a syllogism is if there's no argument against the premises and that they're related and that the conclusion follows and necessarily, not as an option, has to follow, right? Then if a person finds no arguments in the structure of it, right, then they have to accept the conclusion. And it's the only intellectually honest thing to do is to accept the conclusion.
No, I understand. I think what you're trying to do is just keep to a good summary. And so when you brought up examples like from your friend that brought up other examples, was just correlating how those all still connect. So the syllogy still works even with the other examples.
Yes, it would just result in a different conclusion, which is fine. That the conclusion it results in may also be true.
I don't know. I think the conclusion still stays the same. That's why that syllogy is so well refined, I think is the right word.
Well, it has to be. Yeah.
Well, that was your goal, was to summarize and refine it, I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want there to be nothing left in argument.
Right. So if there were a contradictory or some sort of conflict, I guess, with some other concept that has to do with rest and with Sabbath, then that could possibly make that syllogy in question. But I don't think that there is any. As I'm thinking it through, I think the syllogy is that good. So even like I said, even with your friend's example, Christ, we rest in Christ. Well, that's what that means. Was once we're in heaven, once the judgment's happened, into your rest. That's Sabbath. Sabbath is a day of rest.
Right.
So it still works.
Here, this would be interesting. I wonder if I can find the word commandment in some quote of God in this same context. I don't think you can. If I'm right, if this syllogism is correct, you should never find God saying it's a commandment.
It's two M's.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. It's like my language comprehension is really high and my spelling sucks.
You typed it earlier tonight and you got it correct, so
I'm doing three things at once. Yeah, I'm watching side chat, peace and respect to Freak. I'm talking to you and I'm writing at the same time. So I would expect to have some problems in that somewhere.
Are you eliminating the duality of the statement?
Am I eliminating the duality? Yes, in the second. Let's do it like this so we can talk about it easily. So in P2 is an assertion as to why it should be read this way. A declaration of inability is more consistent with the whole of the text. So, like that would let's say that I'm right, all right? Just for argument's sake, just for now, let's say that this syllogism is correct. The conclusion follows. It is valid and sound, right? Let's assume that for just a moment. What would this resolve? Okay, this would resolve the apparent contradiction of God in taking the son of David.
Wait a
Because
minute,
as
remind me.
David declares, I'll see my son in heaven. Right?
Well, we talk about his physical son, or we talking about Christ?
Well, it's talking about his sending a man to death in war, impregnating a woman, and God aborts the baby. Well, that aborted baby never reproduces, so it can't mean Christ. It can't be a reference to Christ. It's not part of the lineage of Christ. So no, it doesn't mean Christ.
I thought Christ's lineage included David. I thought
it does include David, but it doesn't include David's first cause pregnancy, because that child was never born, never had children.
Oh, that sounds like a whole other Bible study.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's a lot here, but we can easily say that since David says, "I'm not going to see my son again until heaven," which somehow he knows it's a boy. I don't know how. Maybe he saw the fetus when it was rejected by the body, and then what was my point there? That God restores. That means God restores it in heaven. Okay, so it was killed by God, but is it killed permanently? No, it's not. So that would resolve that apparent contradiction, saying that God says, I know of my plans for you to benefit and give you a hope for the future, these kinds of ideas. And then you say, well, God killed David's son. No, he didn't. He eliminated him from his experience on an earth. I'll agree to that.
Oh, wow. Richard, I could share a personal anecdote to reinforce that.
Go ahead.
So, I don't know if you remember, I lost my son Jesse when he was 13.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yeah, man. And one of the verses that helped me the most through it, and I have to look it up again, I think it was in Isaiah, where it said basically how good people die, and most people don't seem to know why, or they don't think much of it, but they don't realize, and the verse says that they don't realize that God is sparing them from something that was bad to come.
Yes.
So what you just said a moment ago instantly reminded me of that.
Did that ring true for you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. See, here's the thing, man. We cannot see all futures. The heavenlies see all futures. So we have no comparison. So it's an appeal. It's a logical fallacy for certain. But if they actually do know more than us, you don't know how bad your life might have been if they hadn't interfered. You have no clue.
I'm going to try to look up that verse. It's been a while. I used to... Isaiah 57:1. Good people pass away, the godly often die before their time, but no one seems to care or wonder why. No one seems to understand that God is protecting them from the evil to come. That helped me so much. And what you just said reminded me of that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you can talk about any part of the Bible and I remember it. and I have in prayer gone through the Bible very, very, very slowly. It's like slower than anyone I've ever heard of. And I remember all of it, even weird things that nobody would care about, nobody ever quotes. What was that? Isaiah what?
57:1, and 57. It's only written on your heart, Richard.
Well, it is written on my heart. It is written in my heart. I can't forget it.
Right.
And I hear people make claims, and here's an awful example, not an actual claim, but the sort of thing people say. They'll claim things like, I don't know, there's 7 levels of hell. Well, I'm sorry, that's Dante's Inferno, not the Bible. You're just wrong. That's just not in the Bible. I'm sorry. So people make claims like that, and I'll go, actually, you can't make that claim, and you're just wrong.
Did you hear? Did you read the story of what happened when Dante gave that sermon?
No, never heard that.
I don't know how true it is, but and I don't know if it's second nature or not. But supposedly, he was reciting his it's a book he wrote, and he was preaching it in a church sermon once, and the people like were literally seeing what he was preaching about, and they were like moving around and jumping and screaming, and like they were visiting hell as he was preaching it. I don't know.
Like they had firsthand experience from it. It was that compelling.
Right. They were experiencing it as he was talking about it,
yeah. There's few preachers who can cause a mass delusion.
yeah.
I mean, obviously they weren't actually in hell.
Right.
So I'm not insulting them in any way, but they had a mass delusion or illusion.
Right.
And I think there's higher entities involved often when that sort of thing happens. Nerdy Rodent, peace and respect and welcome, and thanks for dropping by. Please stroke the algorithm. It needs your love. How is one getting an ought from an is? Exactly. Okay, so what I'm saying is in an ought, it is differentiation. The world as we know it is. Right? And since these are declarations of inability, they're not oughts. They're not an ought. It's not asking us to do or refrain from some action. It's not asking that. So it's not an ought is fallacy, right? It's actually, from what I'm understanding, a declaration of inability saying that you cannot do these things. It's not you should avoid or you should do certain things. That's not it. But when we are ascended, perfected, vivified, whatever word you like, quickened, that these things don't exist in heaven. So our actions now are pretty irrelevant and have no effect on heaven, is what I'm saying. So it's not an ought-is fallacy. Does that make sense? I don't know if I said that the way your brain needed it. You'd have to tell me.
By the way, Richard?
The conclusion is you ought to read it a certain way. Oh, in my syllogism, you're saying the syllogism is the ought is. Yeah, ought. The ought is premise 2. A declaration of inability is more consistent within the text. And that's why ought. After all, if something's inconsistent within itself, you can make it read whatever you like. Right? And people do. But what I'm saying is that when it uses a certain term a certain way, you should always have the same application. If the context is the same, the application is the same, is what I'm saying. So, like, God is good. That's a statement in the text. Well, if God is good, you should never find God doing an evil. Right? That would be consistency. If God is good, God is always good. If God is always good, God should only do good. If God should only do good, then everything you read in there should be able to be read as a good act. So that'd be consistency. And that's why ought.
Mr. Richard, I had an interjection again if you wanted to indulge me.
Every time that I'm able to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when you talked about the mass delusion thing, it reminded me. So it was like just yesterday, I was listening to, I think it was a YouTube video. A guy was sharing a story of an atheist converting, and one of the points that caused him to start to change his mind, he actually went to a mental health doctor to ask about, how come people could have just had a mass delusion to the 500 that saw Jesus after the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor told him that because he said that's mentally impossible for that many people to have the same delusion at the same time. The doctor basically told him that if 500 people all had the same delusion at once, that's a bigger miracle than actually seeing Jesus rise from the dead.
It would be. It would be. Unless there was a set of mental cues that prepared the people to all simultaneously see the same delusion. For instance, big Vegas magic acts may have more in attendance than 500, right? And they all mistakenly see the same thing because what the magician did. So I agree with him and I disagree. On a clean background, I would agree. 500 people are not going to have the same mass delusion. They're not going to. That's impossible. They would have different mass delusions.
Right.
But it's like mentalism. The human brain operations are so predictable and like genetically decided that there's 85% of the people that if you show them the color orange and you show them the number 7, they will automatically think of a carrot. So that's what mentalism does, is it takes advantage of things like that, right?
Association.
Yeah, your brain will associate a 7 and the color orange to a carrot. Because a 7's kind of shaped like a carrot, the color orange is obvious, I don't need to explain that. And that's a horrible example, and it's a lot more nuanced than that, but you get the general idea.
Were you going to make a point about that Isaiah scripture?
I love all scripture.
You brought it up.
See.
I just wanted to make sure to remind you in case I didn't want you to miss a point you were going to make.
Yeah. I don't know, but I would bring it up just to see if there's something I would want to say. How's that?
Very good. I do believe it is your show.
I'm persuaded the same. Which is why I can declare, "Thou shalt not kick me off my own channel."
Exactly.
Okay, so here we have Isaiah 57:1. And anyone who is unfamiliar, let me inform you. Like this chapter title, "Evil Leaders Rebuked," just like the numbers 57:1. were added much later, and in no way is anything beside whatever governing bodies, whatever scribal bodies were deciding these things. They added in much later just for reference. Okay, so you can't like think evil leaders rebuked is part of God's word. It's not. It's really not. Nor these numerical sequences 57:1. That is not part of the Word of God. It's just reference. Okay? Just in case a person didn't know that. The righteous perisheth. Now, the ETH means continue to. And that's the difference between perish and perisheth. So the righteous continue to perish, and no man layeth to heart. Like really understand, take it in fully, things like that. And merciful men taken away. So here we have like some kind of an ascension going on there, maybe. We'll see. None considering that the righteous is... Oh, the taken away means like put in prison here. The merciful men taken away. None considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. Okay, so it does mean ascended, preserved. Okay, here we go. Yeah. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, walking his uprightness or righteousness. So that's like this is a reference, of course, to the invalid resting in their bed, and then walking in uprightness, meaning healing, right? So that's the idea, again, of perfection when they are taken away. So we're taken away into perfection.
That's actually really deep, Richard.
I know! This stuff is all real deep, man.
Well, my first read was just talking about just people being able to give a good rest and walking, like you said, in their righteousness, but then the way you just put it was... Yeah, you're talking about going to heaven and...
Yeah. So, but draw near hither, meaning toward where? Toward me, toward the speaker. Who's the speaker? The speaker here, God. Right? So draw near me, Ye sons of sorceress. So the sorceress, the feminine evil, oftentimes the earth, right? So it's like saying sons of the earth who are misled by sorcery. There's a common theme. The seed of the adulterer and the whore. Yes, the whore being the earth again. Like Whore of Babylon, those kinds of ideas.
Or the beast.
That too. Yeah, that is definitely one of the magicians, the beast. Against whom do ye support yourselves? Against whom make ye a wide mouth? Draw out the tongue. Ye not children of transgression, a seed of falsehood, inflaming yourselves with idols under every green tree, slaying the children of the valleys under the cliffs and the rocks. Yeah.
Pretty evil.
So it's evil in the world, but acceptance of righteousness, entering a rest and walking in uprightness. And it just kind of makes me a little misty, bro. Yeah, there's actually no part of it that I don't see that's extremely impactful. And Joel, I've told you before that if a person troubles themselves to translate the lists of names, they're a story within themselves and worth understanding. Just because the translators saw a list that looked like names and thought they were names and didn't translate them, doesn't mean they have no meaning.
You want to analyze the NLT version?
I don't find them different. Because I'm not using a church view, so the translation is quite irrelevant. All of the base ideas are there regardless of the translation. So I don't find a difference in the translations, actually.
Sure.
But I do know that most people read KJV. Go ahead, Domenico.
So what value, Richard, I'm just going to put this out here, reading something in a left to right procedure, up or down, opposed to the opposite way, and also reading it in an English context opposed to Hebrew or Greek. They're all different energies. So when somebody reads, it's like the diodes in LEDs. What it does to the hemispheres, it entrains it. This is why we have things called scholars and scribes. They're using the upper receivers. They're not using that lower receiver where the man mind comes from. This is why when people read things like man in heaven, they're usually using the word man, creation. God created something in his image. Right. We look up in the sky, we see images. So man, the mind, and men are two different things, M-E-N. This is why the fallen ones, when they came in here and they basically started impregnating men's daughters, this is where we start getting alchemy now. And this is why we got the written work. The written work in this age, if it was done in this age, the written work would never come to be. It's too cumbersome. This is why oral teachings is by far more valuable, but most of us aren't going to meet an immortal being. We're going to meet mortal, so pen to paper is what we call history. Where I'm going with this is how much people are using their upper hemisphere opposed to their mid-gut.
Boy, that's hard to say. I mean, I was totally defeated in what I thought was true by intervention from what I perceive as angels in heaven, and I was completely humbled, and it's because of that, and that what I was shown in that time continues to work, that I'm persuaded that it's true. So I don't even think it's dependent on me if there's a strong enough intervention. I don't think these are my opinions.
Okay, so then at that point, you have to be of service. There's being of service in heaven or be rulers on earth. So most people are being ruled and they're serving the self, the ongoing program. So once you wake up, you're using your senses now. That's why in the dream state, you're in a thing called silence and stillness. A lot of people just don't know how to interpret dreams. This is where people get the words like inspire, intuition, insight. Women are preset with the mind communicating with the midbrain. We have to actually, as men, learn that because most of us are caught up in our masculine energy. That's the programmable energy, not the feminine energy, which is the teachable energy. When we do debating and arguing with each other, what we're doing is we're trying to validate our very narrow perceptions.
Possibly.
Expanding. Yeah, it is a possibility because we're always using perceptions here, Richard.
Sure,
I'm using a
course.
language that doesn't belong to me. So when I play with words, people get very offended. I said, no, because you've thought those thoughts are yours. You don't own them.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
That's true. That's
If
true.
I may add to that, you reminded me of an old favorite song from Queensryche called Silent Lucidity, which is what you're talking about. Be able to kind of live in your own dream.
Mm-hmm. Hence the word
Control your
silence.
dream.
Yeah, silence is golden. Golden is a conduit. But for most of us, people might think the act of silence. I'm not talking anymore. No, silence inside, meaning that you're going to go into a state of meditation where you're listening. Hence the word peace for silence, prayer, inquiry. I'm just using words for me that resonates with me. For other people, they can use whatever word they want. Like when people use the word, we're not fighting against blood and flesh and blood, but principalities. Well, that implies then what are we? Are we the demons? And we're fighting with higher sources. Again, it's one of those things where you have to be able to spin the cycle and say, how do I not know I'm the one that's playing that character? The Bible, is it trying to reach me who I truly am, or the physical vessel that is mortal? It's already been stamped. It's going to perish. So when somebody says to me, Dom, I'm 30 years old, I'm like, so you actually think you're the vessel? Your vessel's aging.
I'm 30. Yeah, that's an interesting statement, right?
Again, I'm just playing with words, guys. Again, words, the breath of life, whatever we want to use. What is air? That's why when people play cause and effect, I said, okay, so you see the effect. Where do you see air? I'm not saying some people probably have the ability to see what's called air. No different. Some people can play musical instruments and see colors. But what I see is me describing things. So I'm saying that a tree. I'm using a subjective, unknown word to describe something. Hence the word Kabbalah. I'm going to receive it. So I don't see tree, sequoia tree. I see the lineal material. I use the word material and evil as the same word. It's an evil world. It's a material world. It's a perishable world. Again,
I find it really objectionable when someone says, I am autistic.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
Or I am statements like that. No, you're not. Your flesh is. That's fine.
That's right. At that point, Richard, it's I am and all my personas and my behaviors, all my masks.
Right.
I'm an electrician. I'm a plumber. I'm a male. I'm black. I'm white. I said, well, first of all, you're not black or white. You're dark skin or light skin. But that's designated for what's called magic, the unknown and the known. But again, that's me playing again with words.
Now that goes directly into our dying son's question here. Demolished Doctrine, Richard Madsen. What is sorcery in your opinion? Sorcery is any time that one person knowingly or unknowingly, people can be accidental sorcerers. They can repeat things that are not true and persuade others to believe those same things that are not true. And it has negative effects on the individual, on the society, on the world as a whole. That's what sorcery is. For instance, if I believe, and it's not true, if I believe that gang members are after me personally, that they've identified me, they have a grudge against me, I don't even know why, I'm going to live my life more sheltered, more subdued, hiding more often, taking only back streets, and that's going to lead me into this like paranoid life where I'm just freaking miserable. And I could be, through witchcraft, be led into a life of misery. There's nobody after me.
So, Richard, can I jab at that for a second?
Peace and respect, Harple Blues. Go ahead.
If I'm playing with Wi-Fi or I'm playing with language, that is what's called alchemy, sorcery. I don't actually know how all Wi-Fi works, but I know how it affects me. How radio frequencies. When I'm communicating, I'm calling something steel. There's one form of sorcery where I'm looking at the object that we call steel, but I'm also using the alchemy of language. Now, again, this is where people talk about witchcraft. I'm using a craft right now. It's called English.
Yeah, sure.
all languages are crass. Whether I learn body language, American Sign Language, Braille, that's all a language. That's where some people can perceive sorcery, but unfortunately, most people bring in their likes and dislikes. And at that point, it's going to be a very narrow view, opposed to just seeing it for what it is. It's challenging for most people because now they have to actually truly know who's the knower and who's the self. Once you become that, then you can become the observer.
Mm-hmm.
And once you realize that, I said, oh, okay, so I've learned all these different variations of indoctrination. So I'm playing within this indoctrination. So I'm going to use a language to describe it. Hence the word describe. No different emotions. You're going to express an emotion, but you're not going to see anger. You're going to see it acted out or manifested in the physical. But that's not anger.
Right.
Again, somebody could turn around and say, but I'm picking up the energy of anger, but I'm not actually seeing it manifest in the physical.
Right.
I thought principality just meant like authority, like a government.
In the idea of me being scared of a gang, right? Mm-hmm. I'll use that because I can again right here. The principality is the gang. The power is my fear. So right. Principalities and powers are like a principality is a set of sentience. And then the power that they have is whatever influence they have on the actuality.
Which reminds me of a lot of counseling techniques, when especially people have been victims of abuse, or like what you're talking about,
Sure.
They say don't let that person have power over you.
Well, having rulers over you, this is where you have the term understand.
Well, or just even an individual, just any kind of thing, like Richard's saying, whether it's a group or not. They have the power over you, just whether they're actually after you or not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you give them the power, like I think relationship issues, a lot of people, they say they all have a bad relationship, and the counselor will say, well, just don't let them have that kind of power over you. Just make your own mind, make your own, choose your own reactions.
And our dying son, in agreement with, gosh, what was your name again? I'm so bad at that. Domenico. Sergini. How do you say that?
Oh, that's just my parents' surname. Tersini. But you don't have to say that, Richard, if you don't want.
Tersini. Okay. Our dying son, in agreement with you. Don't forget, it is a given authority to stand under or understand.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct, gentlemen. Yes.
And we have many energies that are over us. The air, the wind. Unfortunately, most people get caught up in their little dome, their little world within themselves, and they're looking through those two eyes, which could easily be, misled. So in this case,
their comfort zone.
Yeah, they get comfort, but again, this is where you apply discernment opposed to disknowledge, where you have discernment knowing that you're standing under something. In this case, most of us are standing under the concept called the mind. Where do we get all languages from? It's like AI. It's a kind of a similar thing where AI can be anywhere at any given moment. It could be helping a mechanic, it could be helping a kid. The mind's the same way, where Sanskrit, Greek, all those languages are stored. This is where people get the concept of soul data. Whatever you perceive or think or create here stays here. It doesn't go somewhere else. Once you jump back into another form, you might be able to recall all of that. This is where the elites understand that a little bit. They know how to come back and become consciously aware of certain things. Where most people, what they do is they'll spend time working aimlessly at a job, which is a self-fulfillment in some way. They had to create the fiat currency because having master in slavery is very limiting. Meaning that most people do not want to be ruled over. Most people have the concept of free will, but they don't want to submit their will to something else beyond them. It's almost a sense of disobedience at that point. You want your cake and eat it. I want to live in a realm where everything comes to me, but yet I don't want to understand who creates it, let alone submit to it. Regardless if we call it the devil, Satan, Lucifer, the gods, the demigods, the Allahs of the worlds, the I am, the jealous God, those are all written stories, but then who do they serve? Does it serve me? Does it serve Richard? Does it serve Joel? That's a simple inquiry. Most people don't want to serve, they want to rule. If they're truly understanding they're self-absorbed. I'm talking from my own hypocrisy position, by the way, guys.
It's like wanting a free society that society still makes rules and regulations, laws.
Oh, we do. Well, laws is more or less for like light, land, air, water, and space over nature. Nature's wild and untamed. What humans create are policies. But when we start using erroneous words to describe things, such as like the word news, why is it acronyms of four opposed to acronyms of threes? Why do you see 3 1s opposed to 4 1s? This is where Tesla was ever so lightly talking about the combination of 3, 6, and 9s. He's talking about the energy of numbers, not just how you use them. It's the energy of numbers. Symbology. It's almost, Joel, it's like symbology. Symbology, you can have a whole story written by basically one symbol. And numbers are symbols. So there's a story written behind each number.
Certainly in Chinese language, yeah.
Yeah.
Mandarin?
So, yeah.
You can have a whole paragraph in one letter.
Yeah. And I think that's what they do with data. I've heard a couple of buddies where they literally said they've gotten technology where they can get a chip and they can absorb energy and also information, which could be the same thing. And it can be downloaded into one chip. So think about us. We have many receivers in us. We're kind of like a walking cell phone to a certain point. And then, of course, we play with polarities. Always enjoy when people say, Dominic, I don't want to be negative. Well, then how does the car work then? How does the sun and moon work? The feminine energy called negative has to fuel the positive energy.
Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it up to you and the side chat audience. Shut it down. These two keep going if they're willing while I go have a cigarette. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah.
You guys are willing?
I am.
Oh, sorry for going on a rant, Richard, but if people want...
Sorry for what?
For going on a rant.
What? We love rants.
Okay.
As long as they're coherent rants.
Okay, I try to be coherent.
So far, so good. I've not had trouble understanding you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yep.
And Joel.
Yeah. No, you keep both of you guys keep giving me other ideas, so I love it. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna go smoke, guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I was observing the oxymoron you were describing. So, like, I was trying to say how even to quote have a free society, you still have to have rules or things that don't make you fully free. I guess if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the concept of anarchy, where how does anarchy for oneself is one thing, but having anarchy by the masses, how does that look like? I mean, like, how would everybody, even technology been created at this point if we had anarchy? Who would actually be creating cars? I get it, we'd be still farmers and hunters, which would be a good thing, but what happened if we were two species spliced into one? There's the human aspect of us, and then there's the being part of us. Because animals don't have the same ability as me and you, Joel. I don't see giraffes creating bridges. I don't see elephants creating airports. So we've created something or made something that literally could be affecting nature, the harmony of nature. So now at this point, do we play what the elites talk openly about? Transhumanism, metaphysical, go beyond the human experience. Some people will say, oh no. I say, okay, but how many people would want to live longer, healthier, not have to die, not have to grow their own food? If they say, well, yeah, I'd want all those things, well, then you're favoring transhumanism.
They're just heaven.
Yeah, well, that's another story. Heaven, and would we be able to have physical vessels to be in that thing called heavens? Maybe we are going back to the way we were before. Maybe we are supposed to be, I'm speculating when I say spiritual beings, but the human aspect has its limitations. Like, we can explain it, other people have done the work, but where is, when I tell my buddies, where is the words that we're speaking? That's the unknown. So when we speak, now we're playing with sounds and frequencies. Prior to that, when you're in a state of silence, is that a different type of frequency? When people talk about different sound frequencies that maybe for the human senses can't pick up, we have to use technology. And even that opens up another question. Who's giving us this technology? I don't know anybody that creates Wi-Fi. I see the evolution of the technology. Go ahead, sorry.
You reminded me of Freeman Dyson. He said that technology is a gift of God. He said it's apart from the gift of life, technology is the greatest gift. It's the mother of sciences and civilizations, and
Mhm.
yeah.
But then I can pose the ideal: did the gods or God forget to create all this stuff, or is that this another species? This is why when people observe nature, you see more of a curvature in nature. When you start seeing what we make, it's more of angles. Hence the word angels kind of ideal. There's more angles, and it's not cheap. There's no harmony in most of the stuff that we create. Like I don't see a car harmonizing with an airplane. If anything else, the airplane's making a disturbance within nature. We just tolerate it,
Mm.
and then some of us go into disease. Some people are so affected by radio, electrical, and Wi-Fi frequencies that their body actually goes into disease, and then cancer cells, for example, get activated. Being an electrician, I used to ponder. You're lining your whole house with electrical wire. What are you, like is it just a big microwave now that we're doing to each other?
Mm.
I'm entertaining possibilities here, Joel.
Yeah, there's ionizing and then there's non-ionizing radiation. So supposedly non-ionizing radiation doesn't hurt you. It's the ionizing radiation that does.
Okay, so without putting an envelope over that, have they done the tests for the genders, the different blood types, the different cultures, the different the different hemispheres that we live in? A lot of times these studies are done usually to somebody that's very healthy, and they probably narrow it down. So, okay, we're only going to test 8 blood types. Okay, so how does that affect somebody that's an O blood type? Especially when people realize all liquids have a purpose. Whether it's gold, urine, blood, water, it all has a purpose. The material part, okay, it has a purpose too. People killing an animal or fruits or whatever, as long as you're being, very grateful that there's a living being inside of that, I need to boot you out because I need whatever that flesh has to offer me.
Well, your blood type analogy struck me too, because I've found out fairly recently that there's like over 50 actual blood types, but in the ones that we talk about, yeah, they're just as like a summary of things that are kind of close together. But there are rare blood types out there that, yeah, if you've got that, then you're out of luck.
Or in luck, so they say certain blood types,
Well,
and you're right, they might not they go into disease as much as other blood types will.
right. Well, I guess out of luck if you needed a transfusion or something, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, that even moves up at people when they do blood transfusion or organ transplant. Next thing you know, they're picking up memory of another person. So where's that coming
I've heard
from?
that. Yeah, did you seen those studies
Mm-hmm.
with the heart transplants and stuff? Yeah.
So that means certain people have that ability. Like the story of Jesus. Drink your blood and eat your flesh. What is he, a vampire now? Hey, I'm posing the ideal. So there could be value of people that might perceive themselves as vampires. They're fueled. Me and you are fueled by air. We eat and consume things for the vessel, but me and you are fueled by air. We're always breathing in and out. That's constant. We pollute the air, we're out of luck. We could probably go 3 days without water, maybe 10, 30 days without food. But when it comes to the air, then now we're talking about, do people move on, pass away, whatever word we want to use, when you no longer have air going into that vessel?
About 12 minutes. Yeah, good point.
Oh, okay. 12 minutes. And then what's the side effects for most of us after 12 minutes? Are we talking brain damage? Or those characters that can go deep sea diving, they have an ability to store air in their body. Again, those are different abilities, I guess. I don't have them, but I know enough to at least note them.
Yeah, you can train your body to do all kinds of phenomenal things.
True, Joe. But if all of a sudden me said, okay, let's set out, we've seen a bunch of guys running 100-meter spin under 10 seconds. I could probably train as much as I want for probably 3 or 4 generations and realize, I've never been able to do under 10 seconds. I just don't have that gift or that ability. I might have other abilities, but not that one.
Well, there's technology.
Now we're, and that's valid. Now we're using some sort of aid. This goes back to, we can use a calculator to aid the people that just aren't good with having numbers in their head.
Right.
So then you help other people But then what ends up happening in the balancing of everybody, you're going to accelerate other people that wasn't meant for them, and other people that had that natural gift to decline. It'll be no different finding out there's a child that has the ability to read the signs in the skies. Eventually, you could do that with all the technology we have, but like anything else, it'll also make us lazy. How many people would know where to plant their seeds based on where the sun and the moon have to be? You know,
It reminded me of a funny instance when I was working on my first undergrad. I was taking a calculus 4 class, right? And so, which I'm normally pretty decent at math, but it gets to a point where it's just a little too much. And I'm working on my homework one day, and I turned to my ex, she's my ex now, but I turned to my significant other and just asked her, remind me, what's 6 times 7 again? And she starts laughing. She's watching me do all this crazy math, and she's teasing me. She's like, I must have exceeded my RAM space because I'd put so much junk in my RAM. Like, it sounds like what you're talking. The simple stuff fell out, you know? So,
Mhm. True. Well, we probably harm the recall ability because we're cramming so much information. And again, that's even the human experience. Have we limited ourselves that for us to take in more information with all this technology, the problem will be the human vessel. It's like saying, okay, me and Joel can no longer cram any more information into the Commodore. It just can't. It's limited. So the processor, everything. Now that information is still there, but we need another computer, in this case, Apple or whatever, to store that information. You know, it's like I tell my buddies, you know, when you're talking to Siri on the computer, ask her, is she the computer? If she's aware of how she's been programmed, no, I'm the program. I'm not the computer. I'm not the electricity. I'm not the Wi-Fi. And it's the same with us. Are we the vessel? Are we the thoughts? Are we the prana? We could be, and I'm willing to entertain that ideal. It kind of goes what Richard's talking about. Even when we have another technology, the written work, what does it really do to us when we're taking information from a written work? Especially when somebody says, Dominic, it's factual. I said, did you experience it? Well, no. Did you observe it? No. So then you're parroting that information.
Yeah.
It's imagination at that point. And at that point, I could turn around and say, yeah, I can believe in anybody, Jesus, Socrates, but I don't know who they are. And even if I met them, I would have to say, okay, so what do you guys stand for? What's your teachings? What value does it bring to this age? If Buddha lived in this age and he wasn't born a wealthy person, would he be consuming all kinds of stuff? Maybe. You know, and how many people could truly say, I'm going to be like the Buddha? That would have to be like a Bill Gates at that point. I have all this wealth and I'm willing to give it all up. Most of us are already living under poverty. You know, poverty in the sense that most of us, well, I can't speak for you, Joel, I'm speaking for me, where if somebody did ask me, Dom, do you know how to raise animals? Not really. I could learn, but would I be able to maintain it? Do I know when to grow my crops? Probably not. So now I'm actually going to whoever they are, their grocery stores, and deciphering which one is the lesser of all evils. So I eat meat, should I eat vegetables, should I eat fruits, or maybe I should eat something that's in a can. I wonder why my vessel. Go ahead.
To me, it's about convenience, and certain people enjoy things. So you know, I was making 6 figures earlier this year, and then lost that job, and so I'm traveling here to the Philippines right now and staying with my family here. That they have to grow their own food. They have to, they got ducks and stuff all out in the front yard. They have to do that just to maintain because they don't have the conveniences, as I like to call it, as we have in America, but I still feel wealthy,
Our attachments, our suffering is more on our comforts and our convenience. So I'll give you an example. People of old, the few, would probably either do some sort of substance and would download certain informations. And then they would have to usually most people that download information don't write anything. That's why Jesus and a guy like Socrates never wrote nothing. They understood the hemispheres. So now other people that think they were students say, well, I'm going to write all that down. So now when you're writing it all down, you're already done the photocopy version. You haven't really truly downloaded that information, especially if it was inspired to be written or spoken after thoughts. Therefore, through inspiration, should you be able to grasp that information. But most people never get to that awareness. What most people do is, I drive a car, they're not going to understand how a car really works. They're going to say, I'm going to vote for a system, but I'm not going to understand how it truly works. So at that point, they should be honest with themselves and say, then what would you be defending or attacking? It's usually one's likes and dislikes. And that is so, it's like philosophizing with your likes and dislikes. That's not philosophizing. Philosophy is about whys. It's not telling me you knew Socrates or Kant. That's not philosophy. That's parroting information at that point.
Welcome back, sir.
Hey, Richard.
Thank you so much. You know, interestingly enough, I am not well read whatsoever. But the things that I'm espousing sometimes are extrapolation from a baseline story I was given in prayer. And people often ask me things like, "Oh, did you study whatever philosophy?" And I'm like, "No, I never studied that guy. I don't know anything about him. It's just the rational conclusion of what I've been shown."
You're probably more intuitive. Have you fasted before numerous of times, Richard?
Oh, I fasted several times. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that gives it away a little bit. You know the whole Joel, Buddhism, what they talk about. Let me prayer. Let me fast and meditate. Let me fast and listen. That listening internally. So you don't have to always take it from a very scholarly approach. You can intuitively get all that information.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you remember some of our first conversations, Richard, between you and I? Uh-oh. Hello? Did my network? I see the time going, but I don't hear or see anybody move.
I'm still here, Joel. I don't know if Richard got booted out or.
Yeah, he's either paused or doing a very good master eye staring contest and winning.
Could be. If you want to wait,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Did someone just boot him from his show? I'm confused. Yeah.
If you want to wait to share that with Richard, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But fasting does play a role.
Huh?
Fasting does play a role. It tells people it's kind of like purging from any substance. It aids to a certain point, but eventually it could be harmful to somebody. So for a lot of us, we're so dependent, almost addicted to things like food, and it'd be different if it's a healthy type of food. But for most of us, we're probably eating foods that it gives the illusion that's nutrients, but it isn't.
Right.
Especially if people start studying, days of the weeks, the colors were each associated for each day. Like I understand this stuff, doesn't mean I practice it. Knowing where the sun and the moon have to be and all the other alignments in the skies to know what type of foods, whether internally or externally.
Okay. Yeah, no, I relate with a lot of what you're talking about. I've been accused of being called a what's they call a polymath. You heard of that term?
What does that mean, Joel?
Supposedly, somebody that just has a large amount of varied interests. So, like what you're talking about, like with cars and stuff, I, just my natural instinct have always been to try to just know things, just figure things out. So, I do know basically everything about a car. I've never had a job as a mechanic, but I've fixed enough cars over the decades. I feel pretty confident. I can. There's a lot of things that I can do. I can raise my own food. And I don't feel exceptional. I don't seem like I'm anybody special. But like you were saying, I think is true. A lot of people don't want to know a lot of these different things. So,
well, first, well done, Joel. Yeah, well done, and thanks for telling me that, the definition. For a lot of people, even myself, people become specialists in the craft, opposed to being able to know many crafts. Our forefathers would be a person like yourself. They would have many crafts. They would have to know how to work with steel, understand how to treat animals. If not, be with other fellow beings that would say, okay, I know all those different crafts. But we've become so, well, not overall. There's still a lot of people that have that ability, where a lot of other people, it's kind of like the calculator. We become so used to going to one source and then wonder why, it's been extinct, or, why are they changing to digital currency? I said, because it's new technology, and most of us have bitten into all this technology. As I'm using this, I'm using a cell phone. That's part of the technology.
So is it just a preference, maybe, or is there a better reason? I mean, 'cause I just do it because I like it.
You probably, like you said, you like to learn. You like to learn. You like to consume knowledge. You probably want to understand it too. Knowledge is one thing. A lot of people can go to university and accumulate all kinds of knowledge, but how do you apply it? How do you discern where to apply it? Welcome back, Richard.
Thank you.
Hey. Made us challenge your syllogy, man. I'm half kidding.
I think we even shared the meaning of life when Richard wasn't around. Oh, you missed it, Richard. Please share, guys.
Yeah. I was trying to ask you before you went, I don't know if you heard, if you recall some of our first conversations, you and I, on YouTube, years and years ago now.
Probably, if reminded.
I think there's some of them still recorded on my channel where you and I were just talking, just off the cuff, and you got into like some deep quantum physics stuff that I was like, dude, where did you, like you were saying, where did you go to school? What it's like you had a job, in quantum physics before, because you were talking the talk.
No, I pray.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's an example of what you're describing a moment ago. God's giving you insight.
I think there's nothing new under the sun, and the angels already know all of these things, and inquiry results in answers.
Yeah, well, so my favorite scientists talk about that in detail as well. In fact, Albert Einstein's got one of my favorite quotes that I'm going to paraphrase. He said basically he's not interested in this or that element or the spectrum of this or that, whatever. He wants to know God's thoughts. The rest are details. To me, that's the summary of all science. Is just and Johannes Kepler said it as well. He said science is thinking God's thoughts after him. So if we've got access to the Creator, the Master of the universe, and He's telling us all the secrets, then yeah, that's how we can know without having to study it.
In an effort of pontification, that is to build a bridge, I think you would agree with me that were you that higher being, ascended being in heaven, and someone wanted to call you Michael, or someone else wanted to call you Apollo, or someone else wanted to call you Abaddon, you wouldn't really care. Because you wouldn't have that kind of pride problem where someone must call you the correct name, right? That's a pride issue. So when someone calls God Allah or Jehovah or Brahman, I don't think God would care. But if you earnestly inquire, you will avail much. I think it's true.
Yeah, I've seen an example of that. I've known people of all walks and faiths around the world, and many of them come to Jesus just because they have, like what you talked about, that genuine commune or conversation with God, a connection.
Now let's talk about how you know the difference between something in your head and something from outside of your head. I mean, that's the important question, isn't it?
Yes, I've had many challenges. I was like, God, did you really just tell me that? So yeah, I have tried to learn that challenge as well. It's not easy.
I really recommend to everyone who's even interested in meditative revelation of any kind that they look into Werner Gitt, an information theorist from Germany, who does an amazing job of describing what is the difference between internal and external information. Go ahead, sir.
He is one of my absolute favorites. Did we talk about him, or did you just find him on your own?
I don't think so.
Wow. I quote him often in almost all my debates.
Yeah, I was brought to Werner Gitt through prayer. I never would have found him on my own.
Werner Gitt, yeah. He was the director and the professor of the what was it? I don't think it was IT, but something.
Information theorist, the German information theorist, Werner.
Right,
It's pronounced Werner, but in English it's Werner Gitt, Gitt.
Yeah, he was basically in charge of one of the German federal institutions there, the university, top dog
That's
guy.
correct. Top dog. Maybe probably best in the world, I think.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, I quote him often for bioinformatics. He talks about how, what he describes as universal information and how that's embedded in DNA. And so he basically makes the deduction that since there's universal information in DNA, then that confirms that God made life.
Yeah, there's a singular source of the universal information. After all, if we look at the real world around us, let's take art as an example. Let's say you were a fan of Van Gogh, right? And there are people that are fans of Van Gogh and know his brushstrokes and know his use of color and the way that Van Gogh saw things and represented those things that he saw or imagined. A brand new painting can pop up, from some garage sale somewhere, and people look at it and go, okay, that could be a Van Gogh, and there's experts in this field that can say something like, that is a Van Gogh. You learn to recognize it. So we know that there can be this internal mechanism in us that recognizes a style, right? So I personally have been shown and now can and educated and now can recognize the style, and because of that, I can see that there's a singular source for the information, which is why I espouse things like this subline here. Demolished Doctrine sees Injil, because I do believe I've been shown the Injil, which is, for those unfamiliar, an Islamic word meaning the original ideas. They don't think that the Quran is the only word of God. They think it's the only surviving word of God, and that the word of God was given to all originally, and I believe that's true. And here's why they don't have it anymore. It's because of telephone game and doctrinal traditions and those presuppositions that Aaron Benton, have not seen you in I don't know how long. Peace and respect and welcome. Feel free to come in. Yes, Midnight.
Anyways, I'm back. How you doing? Went to go have lunch.
Howdy.
So would you say you have divine revelation?
Yes.
Jill, why are you here?
Because Jill loves attention. That's why Jill is here. It's the same reason Jill goes anywhere.
So I'm curious. Richard. Are you familiar with like the one of the more common evangelical techniques of converting, or not converting? It's a bad word. Convincing Muslims into the Christian faith.
No. I would not even attempt that. They already believe in Christ. They already believe all of the necessary things to be ascended into heaven. I just do not argue non-salvific things unless it's just a matter of intellectual exercises.
Well, what you said struck me. That's why I wanted to ask, because the Quran itself specifically says that everything in the Bible is true.
Yes, it does.
And so, a lot of
let's qualify that. Everything in the original Bible, was true.
That's supposed to be what the Bible means, quote unquote. The one actual, right? The Bible given from God. But a lot of Muslims, for whatever reason, some are just raised to believe, that Christ was just a prophet. Christ was not God, and so they will disassociate, Jesus with being Allah or God, whatever. And so that's what kind of brings them back sometimes when necessary, is that, well, if the Bible is correct, the Bible very clearly, Old and New Testament, points out that Jesus is God, and so that brings that back, I guess, that full circle.
I'm personally more interested in what Christ did in the 3.5 years, half of end times, not a coincidence, of his testimony, where he says, "You have heard the following thing, but I say," and what he's doing there is a correction, and he's not correcting the text. He's correcting how they look at the text.
Right.
That's his whole job. So I'm much more interested in following that kind of an idea set, not to bring a Muslim out of Islam, but to show them that what Islam is saying plausibly, consistently, logically, in proportion, in like an idea of a JTB, that they already know the necessary things to accept Christ and ascend into heaven.
Right.
And I'm much more interested in doing that with anyone than converting them into some religion.
Right. And I agree. That's why I said that when I first said converting, I try to correct myself as a bad word. But I'm just saying, for those Muslims that try to disassociate Jesus with being God, that's the reconnection. Because again, the Quran itself, Islam itself, teaches that Jesus is God through that line of reasoning. So.
Yeah, this. I'm sorry. I'm gonna address, and I want to hear what you want to say. Harple Blues is correct here because he has a Christian umbrella. Git is somewhat discounted, and I don't think he should be. I think you should just ignore the religious parts. Go ahead, sir.
So that's the bigger thing. That's where my ministry rests, of course, as you know, Richard. The Christian community as a whole has brought science by almost exclusively, and I can go into I do go into great example why. So for people to say, well, you can't be a good scientist because you're a Christian, that is by definition anti-scientist. That is as much of a science denier as you can be. And just as you accurately described as well, if you have to disassociate your religious bias from whatever other scientific conclusions you want to make. So when someone says, well, Git's not very good, no offense, was it Harple Blues?
Yeah, he's only quoting someone else's claim. You're not offending him.
All right, good, thank you. That someone else is by definition being, anti-science. You don't care about
this person is not Geo. Richard will get the reference.
I didn't hear what you said because you were laughing too much.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry. This person is not Geo.
Yeah, not Geo.
You got the reference, right, Richard?
Interestingly enough, this person's actual name starts with the letters Geo.
What?
But I still want to hear and very politely, and you are so very kind, Domenico, if you would go ahead with what you were going to say, but you paused.
The story of Jesus, the way it's written, when he has said, "You have heard," they weren't talking about written word. They're talking about Pharisees that were speaking. But I say, now again, most people don't have discernment. So what ends up happening in those days, whether or not he was, so they say, he was the witness. When I hear, Richard, you were talking earlier about prayer, inquiry, meditation, listen. There's another thing in between. The Muslims were taught to do this. Peace be upon you. Silence be upon you. Islamic Muslim means about giving your will and submitting it to Allah, whoever Allah is to them. But unfortunately, most people are still caught up in their chatter. So when people are inquiring with prayer, they have to realize before you go into listening to whoever's been running that vessel the whole time, the one that's there when you're asleep, the one that's there when you're in a coma, the one that's there when you're in hypnosis, there's something that's always there, hence knower, the knower of the self. Who is the knower? So now that's the program running. But if you don't go into that state of silence, peace, you don't know if that's your own ego edging God out kind of ideal. So until people do that, then what would you be listening to? Most people, when they go into that state of listening, what they're doing is they're just trying to confirm this, all the indoctrination that they learned, the degrees they learned in school, all the things that my senses pick up. All senses could easily be misled. That's why it says it's no sense. It's beyond the senses. But the waking state, once you wake up in the morning, now you're in the illusion realm. Most people aren't willing to challenge that. They'll challenge others. I think that's wasted energy. It was never about knowing others. It's about knowing oneself, because unless you're honest with oneself, when you're in the car, you're still in that vessel. When you're in the shower, you're still in that vessel. When do you ever leave that? Hence the word eye of the beholder in Plato's cave. Now, a lot of people can give me a whole bunch of indoctrination in a grandstand. I went to university. I said, that's nice. What hobby did you pick up? Which is fine, because most people are going to pick up 1 or 2 degrees. This is not like masonry, where even that, they're limited with 33 degrees. Anyway, I'm having fun with you guys.
No, it's fun. It's fun that you say that's nice. How many hobbies did you pick up? And what hobby did you pick up? To just boil it down to someone getting a degree for a job they're going to do is a hobby. It's just fucking hilarious to me.
It can be, yeah. But for some people, it really, that's what they call reality for them. I said, for me, it's a story still, because when I hear somebody else's, whether they lived it or not, it's still a story to another. So whoever Jesus was, whoever Muhammad was, supposedly Muhammad, the story was he had to be almost like an illiterate, and Gabriel channeled through him. Maybe, could be, possibility.
The difficult part for my journey, personally, and I'd love to hear about your journey, all you guys, is prayer is like imagination. But the difference is the subtle nuance of turning off inventiveness. Gosh, how do I even say this? So it's like allowing instead of inventing. And that sounds like a huge difference, but when it comes to however our internal mechanism works, it's a really subtle thing. And I try to help people refine the difference in that through remote viewing exercises that they gather with their own natural abilities, information that is otherwise unattainable to them through a meditative state that in Christianity would be called prayer. Now, what I find to be true in this is that a religious person who has a deeply doctrinal view of what prayer is has a harder time doing that than an atheist does. And that's interesting. Because the atheist internally has no metric. They don't have this presupposition of what prayer should result in, and are thereby more, and I'm not saying that the Christian is purposefully dishonest. They're not dishonest. It's just that their methodology can be flawed by what they taught in churches. Ask a preacher what is prayer. You will get the most vague bullcrap answer.
If I may, Richard, you're reminding me of what Jesus said in Matthew 7, starting in verse 21. It's one of my most quoted things about, especially controversial stuff, where Jesus talked about how many will come in that day and say, Lord, Lord. And he said basically that not everybody who calls him Lord will be welcomed. And he would say, well, didn't we cast out demons and heal the sick and raise the dead? And Jesus said, depart from me, for I never knew you. So what I just associated with what you said, and the reason why that brought that up to my mind was because to me, prayer simply is just communication. It's talking with God. It's a bi-directional thing. You know God. And if you don't know God, then like you're just describing, a lot of people get into habits where they're just kind of talking to the air. They think that they're, I've heard churches describe it as like a communal prayer or something like that, or there's some other weird word, where they're doing emotion. They're not really thinking about how they're actually talking to the Lord and expecting an answer.
One of the saddest things I ever heard was an interview by Dan Rather of Mother Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked her, when you pray to God, what do you say to God? And her response was, and this is paraphrasing, but I'm not strawmanning her whatsoever, misrepresenting in any way. She says, I don't say anything, I just listen. So the next logical question Dan Rather asks is, well, what does God say? She says, he says nothing. He just listens. Now, what does this tell me? This tells me that she never actually prayed. She never got a clue from God.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If both parties are silent, listening to the other, no one is talking. I know that's the point you made, but I just wanted to vocalize that.
It makes me laugh too, man. Here you have this church icon who says, "I don't know what prayer is."
Well, if I may give an alternative thought, gentlemen, the first thought that came to my mind was the old imagery of two old men fishing in a fishing boat. You know, they say that they don't say anything together, but they're having a conversation still. You know.
Well, that's like okay. Let's talk about communication. There is verbal and nonverbal, local and non-local, audible and non-audible communication.
Sure.
Okay, there's all those different forms, and that's fine. When I'm listening to the radio and I'm listening to my favorite rap song, I do not see the artist. Okay, but the artist is still the source of that rap song that I love so much because I just love rap. This is all sarcastic, but a good example just the same. I'm still having information downloaded into my psyche by that artist. Right? Mm-hmm. Even though he's non-local, he's non-physical, I've got no visual cues, I have only audible cues. I'm still getting something. Right. Okay, and the fishermen in proximity of each other can be having a non-verbal, knowing each other. We have to assume that they know each other very well. They're having a non-verbal body language conversation. That's fine. But that would not work to say it was a conversation if they could not see each other. Okay? So, but what I'm talking about is nonverbal, non-audible, non-visual, non-local. You can't see that person that you're communicating with. You can't hear them. You can't see their body language. You got nothing but the ideas. And that's how I experience prayer. I've never seen or audibly heard or had the illusion of hearing an angel. Not once.
If I can share, Richard, the heart can be read because there's blood that goes to it. There's memory to it. This is why in the Bible they say, you can tell by a man's heart, there's desire. So when people do backbiting, they're feeding the heart. So now when a person goes into a state of prayer, inquiry, most people go in it for self-absorption. What can I get more from you, God? So they're wanting God to serve them, opposed to how can I better serve you, God? How can I be a servant to humanity? Some of the folks, even though it's kind of deviated with theosophy, that was the initial start about how to be a better service to humanity, let alone the beings that roam within them. Hence, serve all living beings and all the forms that they come in. But most people, once again, when they get into that state, it's all about them, me. They might use the word God in vain. It's always fun when I hear people talk about damning God, let alone blessing God. I said, you're speaking in vain. Why? Because this is human affairs. This is human beings' affairs, especially when the gods have said it. We've rested. Some of them are reawakening, but then who has been ruling the whole time? What they created, because man, the MEN came from the garden east of Eden. What was the name of the garden? East of Eden. What was the name? And when basically the serpent said to Eve, did God say so? That was an easy question, yes or no? I never spoke to God. I spoke to the Lord God. So again, this is the story that people do. If you're going to realize how it was inspired, again, I'm talking about a very indoctrinated parroting language called English. We're not talking about creation language. We're not talking about formation language. We're not even talking Greek, let alone Hebrew. It depends how you read it. No different if you start doing different writings, this and that. Richard, you tapped on it, when you talk about remote viewing. Again, that opens the question, who am I then? Am I an energy being contained in a physical vessel, or do I voluntarily come in here? Again, this is people that probably haven't been conditioned correctly. The first 7 years of physical development year kind of ideal. The next 7, the emotion. Most people that are very religious are caught up in underdeveloped emotions, energy and motion. The people that are more scholarly or into state, the ones that call themselves atheists or humanism, they're caught up in the mental planes. They've just never joined them together. So once again, when a person goes into prayer, if they choose to do that, for whose intention? Are you there to, oh, my son just went into the hospital, God, can you help me? Where were you when I was trying to tell you your son's driving too fast with that motorcycle?
So I have a quick question. Are you, correct me if I'm wrong, let me steel man you, but are you saying that atheists don't consider an emotion?
We're always using energy, emotion, but are they developed? Hence Christ consciousness, intellectual development, and maturity of their emotions. Most people are triggered with all the, oh, what a beautiful car, and they quickly respond. I said, there's your trigger. Not because I said you're an idiot. That's trigger. Again, those are people that are not developed in their emotion. I'm
Okay, now
included
I'm
in the
lost.
fun. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I just said, okay, now I'm lost.
Ask clarifying questions.
Could be. Unless you already knew what he was looking for a response.
If I may try to help, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, of course, Sparkle, but there was a connotation that you were thinking, or it sounded like you said atheists are basically more rational than religious people.
Well, no, that because I was trying to ask whether he meant atheists don't consider an emotion as much as Christians or
Or
religious
less
people in
emotional.
general.
Yeah, right.
I
Less
mean,
emotional, more
I mean,
rational is my
I mean, have you met Matt Dillahunty? Like, no offense to him, but the man
Or Aaron Raw, when he loses debate, man, he gets crazy. I love it.
Sparkle,
like.
okay. I was going
Go
to
ahead.
say, was where it's being led. Like I said, the first 7 years, the physical development years. The next 7 years, the emotional development years. The next 7 years after that, the mental development year. The brain, more times not, doesn't fully function until 25. So those are all bodies. So the mental plane for most people, if they're not emotionally developed, this is where people get the worst case scenario of emotional underdevelopment, the narcissist, the psychopath, the sociopath. But what about the people that are with them, bitching and complaining? Where's their development and all of that? But where I was going with it, people that are into state and all that kind of stuff, because really the number one dogma is commerce. You sell any ideal, that's commerce. So now at this point, the ones that follow state are usually caught up in their mental planes, usually because they're not developed. Because capitalism, does it work? Me and Richard are just going to, I'm just using an example, Richard. Me and Richard are going to print as much money as we want and have the military. I can make any ism work.
I mean,
I can
that's
make
not capitalism. That's more. That's more a government being stupid and printing money, thus causing inflation. But that's not inherent in capitalism.
Yeah, but what about all the people that are participating? Or what kind of condition has to be done upon them? You know, one thing is to talk about
I
them
think we're
printing
jumping
money.
topic, guys.
Well, it's kind of about the mental plane. Again, this is where people want to debate, where if you're truly developed, that debate or that revolution should be done within, not without.
I mean, I agree. I agree that people should look within and develop within rather than without. People should have intrinsic motivation rather than extric. Extric. You know what I mean? Sorry, people should have
Extrinsic.
internal. Thank you.
Yes.
Extrinsic motivation. People should have Wow.
Say it in Italian.
There you go. Yeah. I'll understand.
No. I just said people should have intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. Many people, many people are motivated by money, right? Like, by money rather than what that money can do for you, right?
Okay, so what can it do for you? Can it actually motivate an animal? Can it motivate a
Well,
plant?
if I
Well,
may, gentlemen, if you guys remember earlier, Richard was asking if we'd share our experiences. Do you guys want to share what your experiences are with prayer?
did you say my experience praying?
Yes.
Oh, well, this is kind of embarrassing, but when I was like 15, full disclosure, I never really believed, despite going to Sunday school, government communion, and then confirmation. But I found myself praying to God for a girlfriend. Like, please send me a girlfriend. He
What's
never
wrong with
did.
that?
I don't know.
That's a good prayer, in my opinion. That's what Adam's prayer was. He wanted a wife. Remember?
I mean, he had Lilith before Eve, but that
You stop that.
Well, hey, come on, that was canon at one point.
What?
It was.
No.
It was. It's only the women's liberation movement that promotes that kind of an idea, saying that because Eve was submissive, she was wrong. This is a very recently repopularized. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. This is a very recently repopularized idea that was presented quite some time ago by a singular rabbi in an effort to explain the existence of Nod.
All I was trying to encourage was that it's perfectly fine to ask for a significant other for God. That's very common. In fact, there's entire ministries devoted for Christians helping find their next mate. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not what I really said. I just mentioned Lilith.
Oh, okay.
But back to the actual question. You said you'd prayed for a girlfriend. Is that the only experience of prayer you've had?
I mean, there has been times throughout these past recent years. I did pray for, something else to reconcile with that one friend that that things went south with, but hasn't really happened. So I don't know. Well, I mean once, but then 3 days later, it went to shit again. So it's like,
No.
yeah, well.
So your prayer was answered. It just didn't go the way you hoped, right?
Basically.
There's a song, actually several songs, right, Richard, about unanswered prayer, being thankful for unanswered prayers.
Yes, I can think of a country tune right now that uses that precise line.
I don't know. I think there is something to prayer when looked under the lens of the law of attraction, right? To where you focus on something so much, you focus on something so much that that you eventually attract it to yourself. Now, the law of attraction doesn't really give a shit whether you're focusing on the positive or the negative. It will give you what what you're focusing on. Now, obviously there are some people who try to always focus on the positive, but the negative happens. Like, it's not a cut and dry equal, right? You always think positively, you get positively. You always think negatively, you think negatively. I dare to say it's on a spectrum. So there is something to prayer in that context. Go ahead.
What that reminds me of, in startup business, in the world of entrepreneurs, there's something called the 3-foot rule, and what that means is if you come within 3 feet of a person, you talk about your business. And why would you ever do that? Well, because people know people, and sometimes people have needs, and maybe the niche you've selected fulfills a need for the person that you don't know what they need. You talk to them and you ask. So, word of mouth advertising. That what is that? The quote unquote the secret. That's all it's doing. Is it's like mystifying human nature that we are inclined, some of us at least, to help another, or we have some certain need that some other can fulfill. So this law of attraction stuff is just like, it's just obfuscation of human nature. Other than that, it's obviously true, and the way that it's presented, it's not true at all.
I mean, some parts of the law of attraction have been true for me. Like, things have definitely improved once I switched from thinking negatively to thinking positively. I mean, you know me for like, what, 6 years? I forget. You've known me for a while, Richard. So you've seen my evolution. Pardon the pun.
No, it's not a pun. That's actually good usage of the word.
Fair enough. But you've seen the way I've grown over the years.
Sure, some of it, yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
But what I'm saying is, let's say that you truly deeply believe that, and let's do something that really hits home with you, so you'll take this serious. Let's say you truly believed that you had a methodology to lose weight, right? So you really, really believe it'll work, and you never mention it to anyone, and you don't put it in practice. Would you lose weight?
I mean, no, because it's only you're not putting it in practice. Like it's just there. Like it requires, like you can have something in your head. You can focus on something in your head, but if there's no action, there's no way to manifest what you're thinking in the real world.
So let's take it the next step. Let's say you wanted a girlfriend and you don't have one. So you don't go out, you don't meet people, you don't talk to your friends about wanting a girlfriend so that someone will introduce you to someone they think may be compatible. What's the result going to be?
Well, if you want a girlfriend, okay. If you want a hold on. If you really want a girlfriend badly, but you never go out and you never talk to people, of course you're not gonna get it. And to add a little caveat to what I said before, I tried, I tried talking to people when I was younger, but I was the most awkward motherfucker you'd ever meet. So of course I never met anyone. Okay?
We've all felt that way at some point. Yeah. Okay, so my point is your wanting a thing makes you talk about the thing. The treasures of the heart pierce the lip. You will say what you believe and what you want. That's the things you will say. So then that goes out to your immediate friend group, your intermediate and your distant friend group, and that starts a chain of concern that can result in you meeting someone. However, if you were perfectly silent about it and told no one would have any empathy for you and would make no effort for you, and it wouldn't happen. So it's not magic that if you believe something enough, it will happen. That's not magic.
A lot of people just think it's magic because it's a fucking secret. Like I fucking hate that book or video, or whatever. Like, ugh. And also something that I've really grown to hate over the years is the straw man that says think happy thoughts. Thinking positive thoughts is different from thinking happy thoughts. Positive is not happy. I don't understand why the fuck people don't understand that. Sorry, I'm going on a rant.
No, I think you're fine, and you're right. There are different words for very good reasons.
Mm-hmm. Can I share Richard for a bit?
No, just kidding.
I may. I was going to try to say something encouraging, possibly for you.
I have the power. Sorry, I've got him. Never mind.
Right. Yeah, your He-Man moment. I got you. But no, you're reminding me as well. So oftentimes, the Lord will answer our prayers, but in ways for us to learn. So, because like for you, even with your example, I've experienced this. I'm sure everybody's experienced it. Like Richard touched on, is that you had a girlfriend, but it sounds like something went amiss. And so all that's a learning experience. So when God answers a prayer, sometimes like that, even asking for a girlfriend, and you get one, but it doesn't work out, that's a teaching moment. That's so that you can be refined, as the Bible puts it, where you can learn, trials turn to gold. And so God will teach us, God will train us literally through sometimes horrible mistakes, even to make us better, to make us be able to get that perfect girlfriend, get that perfect wife. Sometimes you got to go through a process first, though.
Boy, do I know it. It was so fucking painful. I mean, one time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I go overshare?
Of course.
That's the catch.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. Well, one time I was so enamored with a girl. That's a long story. Never mind.
It's your story.
That's not. Jeez, coitus interruptus. Finish the story.
You're leaving us hanging already.
Okay. Back when I was 18, there was this girl I was really into, and I kind of acted overzealous, and it didn't really pan out that well. It really hurt, especially when she told my friend, quote unquote, because I was using my friend to talk to her because she didn't like me. She's like, "No way, he's creepy, and I don't like him." And I'm like, I literally walked home crying my eyes out. I swear to
No.
God, I swear to God, I still remember the chemical like fucking imbalance that happened while I was walking home. I'm like, what the fuck happened? Looking back on it, it was so fucking
Well,
absurd.
a person can never depend upon someone who can't do for themselves and are needy.
Yeah, you're right. You're not kidding.
So women are scared of needy men, and they should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, more importantly, did you learn something?
Yes.
See, that's what's important. That makes you better.
Whew. I still think about her to this day.
No.
It made such an impact on me. I'm like, God damn it.
Well, you were just past infancy, to be fair about it.
Yeah, to be fair, it was. Oh, wow.
How's that song go? The first cut is the deepest.
Right. And you never forget your first, even though nothing sexual happened.
Right.
But she sure
All
was
right.
an awesome girl.
Well, now you're gonna find a better one, maybe.
Sorry, Richard.
Heaven's greatest representation of art, in my view, is the female.
Yes. Yes.
To me, there's nothing more provocative than that. It can provoke any emotion, just about. It's amazing.
Yep.
Did you want to share an example, Medico?
Well, I was just hearing what you guys were sharing, and usually we speak and reveal ourselves. So when somebody goes into a state of prayer, inquiry, what's one's intent? I hear the word want. Want means lack, opposed to needs. And are you using those needs or wants for a selfish thing or rationally selfish? I'm just playing with words at that point. Rationally selfish, even when I heard earlier, I think Richard, you were talking about losing weight. What's the difference between losing weight opposed to shedding weight? What happens when you lose keys? There's a program running and it says, are you sure is that what you want? Because if you start losing weight, you might not know how to coil that back in, opposed to using different words. Again, these are all placement of words. Self-love opposed to loving the self. Self-aware opposed to aware of the self. Two different things going on. What program do you want to lead? You want your hard drive to lead, or you want your weight, the ongoing program to lead? So again, I'm hearing people talk about their wants. What do I lack? I lack a girlfriend, for example, as an example. So what are your qualities? Well, I'm a compassionate, kind person. So I want to attract something very similar. The universe will attract you to what you are, not what you want, what you are. Now, you can be in denial. You can play the delusional part in the realm of illusion.
No, you're right about that. Yeah, the universe will attract you to what you are. So if you're a piece of shit, you're gonna attract pieces of shit.
Well, at that point, you're being honest, and shit's good for fertilizer. So when you do plant seeds, you have something to useful for it. There's no insult. I've always say that to myself. I'm a piece of shit, but I'm okay with it. Meaning that if somebody challenges me, do you think I'm going to move from that stance?
Well, I mean, saying you're a piece of shit and actually being a piece of shit are two different things. Like I know somebody that calls themselves a literal shithead, but I've known them to be a good person with good morals and a good head on their shoulder. But that's besides the point. Hey Jill, you know what? Yes, I'm afraid of women, and you should be too, even though you have a wife. Like this might be going on a tangent, but in today's society, men should be afraid of women because
Why?
because women have the power to literally destroy your life.
Okay.
So
As men bear arms to each other, do you think that's a little bit of projection going on when we make those kind of statements?
wait, which state? Wait, what do you mean projection? What?
About women? Most women don't even know each other. So why would we, as a man, assume that? It's like my buddy's telling me, Dominic, I can't live with my wife. I said, you probably can't live with most of your guy friends. Again, that's all about oneself. To make it about others, that's just an excuse. Especially if you really look at humanity, it's okay. So how do I defend humanity? For the poverty, for the wars, for some of the breakdancing, for some of the music? Like, how would you defend that, let alone attack that? Again, it's within oneself. Give me $1 trillion, I'll show you exactly how to fuck the system, and vice versa. Again, this is us talking from a very narrow-minded. Forget about open and closed-minded. Those are just variations. A narrow-minded perspective. So So to really understand a woman is by allowing her to get to know herself, and hopefully she can share with her. She can share with you. Outside of that, you would have to know yourself quite well to be able to comprehend another being, and it wouldn't be on the physical level. Outside of that, what we're doing is we're pairing information.
So what you're talking about is the difference between asking things selfishly versus selflessly in prayer.
Or you could be rationally selfish. You know, me and I'm using again Rich as an example. Me and Rich are going for a job. We're interviewing Richard. What have you done on your resume? Okay, I hope the best for you. If he gets a job I don't, I'm going to ask him a whole bunch of questions. So for my next event at another job, I'm going to be the best I can be. But most people, what they do is they're doing like puppy mill mentality. That's the selfish person, self-absorbed, me, always me, and a little bit more of me, which is fine as long as you're honest with the self. You want to do the left-hand path? Fucking be the best you can be at it. Understand the biblical, the satanic Bible. Forget about reading the Bible. Read the satanic Bible. Go ahead.
What about in context of prayer, though?
Yeah, you're going to inquire about something, and the universe will give it to you. If it's meant to, a demon's going to be on your shoulder, so be it. It's going to give you what you want. You want to be served. I'm here to serve. But it comes at a price, whatever that price may be.
There's a lot of things I've wanted that I didn't get.
Lucky for you, because there might be a price you have to pay for it. You know, and I'm not leaning towards it's good or bad. That gives me no direction. It's usually right or left. Good and bad for what person? Then you have to define what is good to oneself, let alone what is bad. Is it the absence of something else? These are the conversations one should have within oneself. That revolution where the ego finally needs to know its place. Doesn't die, just needs to know its place. Because if not, you have the child running the house. Because I love it. You get all this.
So maybe that's what I value in a woman, because I have come to a point, I guess, many years ago of not really wanting a lot of things. You know, I've had good, I've had bad, I've been rich, I've been poor, I've got a lot of really great, amazing experiences. But like Paul talks about in the Bible, you know, it's or even worse, Solomon, Ecclesiastes. It ultimately doesn't matter. So, you know, I want a wife that can help direct me. To tell me her desires that I can fulfill as well.
Well, you're practicing at that point, like Buddhism, non-attachment. It's a struggle. Most of us have attachments, and until you get tested, you know, losing a loved one, you'll have those moments of grieving. More times now, we grieve for ourselves first, and then we grieve for them. Oh, I wonder what they're going through, where they're going. I don't know. You know, but we're still allowed to have those emotions. You know, it's interesting when people say they want to do the 5 stage of grieving, but they've never got angry in their life. How does that work? Learn to get angry. Practice it. Be good at it. Don't be a pro at it, but be good at it.
Yeah, no, if you have a good enough loss, they're going to be angry. You can't avoid those stages. I've learned.
You should. Yeah, you should. You should be. You know, we should be angry at the plight that we as a species put ourselves in. We should be angry. Blaming some entity called the elites. Where's our accountability? You know, we're going to their grocery stores, driving their cars, using their fuel, using their money. So tell me when we're not a bitch. The guys that say otherwise, you're playing a game. Good luck with that delusion.
Well, you could choose not to, you know.
Then you can go. You can take your chance and become interdependent with nature. Either way, you're going to be interdependent with something, and nature will show you. Oh, I can imagine it would be. I appreciate the people that want to be that nomad or whatever. Yeah. But outside of that, me and Joel were talking earlier about this. Our comforts.
Right.
We're caught up in our comforts.
Because I've done that too. I've been through military, survival training, and I used to practice. I haven't done it in years, but yeah, I meet other people. Oh yeah, let's learn how to live off the land. And I'm like, are you crazy? Nature is not pretty. Nature's trying to kill you. Are you sure you're ready for this? Richard's laughing. I love it.
You're just a part of the process. But even when we talk about biblical written information, we've become so lazy opposed to doing the work, getting to that state, download that information. We want somebody else to put it in a written form so we can bitch and complain about it. Oh, this is the way I see the cake. This is the way I see how I crack eggs. Okay, that's fine. They're not opposed to the ideal. How does it look like when we read it in a scroll form opposed to a book form? Well, that's different, Dom. Oh, okay, everything's different at that point.
I think I agree with you, and I think for those that maybe have gone without, they realize you experience having to live the hard way, so it makes it, when you go to the grocery store, is like a miracle, you know.
Mm-hmm. But that could be a story too, Joel. People can actually even have a story written. Oh, I'm poor. You know, I have a disease and all that. Okay, that may be true. I said, but how does that serve? And to who? Like, are you sharing out loud because you think me or somebody else can make a change? Have I done anything to harm you? And am I accountable for the human plight? Probably not. I've played a role in it. But for some people, they make it sound like as though, oh, well, we need people to rule over us. Okay, humans have never shown that they can rule over each other fairly. No ism. Maybe communism might work in theory, but no ism works to fucking rule over humanity.
Well, are you familiar with the story of Israel's first king, King Saul, in the Bible?
And how did he come to be? Because they didn't want to follow an unknown entity through a prophet. So yes, please share.
Yeah. They was it Samuel, Richard? God told Samuel to give them a king. It was as a punishment because he was basically telling Samuel they don't want me. God said they don't want me to be their king, so give them this man, and it was miserable.
Mm-hmm. But weren't they following
like
a jealous God? Maybe it could have been a jealous demigod. Remember, there's fallen ones here, many. Now, are they the gods? Sorry, are they the gods? Because am I to assume that the gods forgot to build cities and highways and all that, or is that just a totally different species now? I get it.
I'm sorry. I was going to say God may be jealous, but he still gave Israel kings. He still forgives sin. He's not a tyrant. He just loves.
Okay, but is that a demigod opposed to the main gods? You know, because like I said, am I to assume that the gods able to put those two objects in the skies that humans have never been able to put anything high enough up there, and it stays there for centuries on end, and those clouds that come and go when they please, the four winds, the air, and all that kind of stuff, am I to assume that the gods said, we just forgot to build cities and bridges and pyramids? Or is that another species? Because remember, even in the biblical story, they talk about manipulating things, manipulating the waters. The earth came to be, earth, dry land. Was it submerged underwater? Maybe. Again, I'm playing with a storyline based on a written work. So I'm already in that program, playing within the program. For me to think I can think outside of it, then would I be in what some people call the deep end of the pool? I wouldn't be here then. So I'm going to entertain my intellect as best as I can. Same with my emotions.
My thought was those are cities and things like that are built out of acts of service. People want convenience, so they'll trade their skills. You know, the farmer will trade his farm goods for money to buy things that he doesn't have time for, and eventually that just, you know, the invisible hand, as John Locke put it.
Like the invisible hand on a chessboard. Yep.
Eventually, you get a city. People cooperate.
You're talking about the evolution, but what I'm saying is when people talk about a god, if they're talking about the God that created the heavens and the earth and all the different bodies of waters and all that kind of stuff, which is the heavens, obviously, and the lakes that we're in and the oceans, am I to assume, and that's what I'm doing, I'm using assumption, that they forgot to do all these other things? Or is there an evolution and we're a different type of species? Like, I get when people say the numbers is the universal language. Yeah, because it's used everywhere. It's used to grade things, used with fiat currency, our tax system. So that's what we're going to perceive as the universal language of numbers, which numbers is also another form of symbols. You know, I personally think the gods do not interfere with human affairs. Personally, that's my view. I can't prove it one way or the other, but I just don't think so. It's just because there's too many things that shows otherwise for me.
I was going to just share the reminder. What you gave me again was that the Greek and the Hebrew languages that the Bible's written in, their numbers and their letters, and vice versa.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yep. Now, are we looking at taking a caption further down into the program where language were first brought to the species? So what was prior to that? Again, at that point, that's pure guessing game. At that, unless you're downloading information. So if a guy like Richard is downloading information, for a lot of us, that might be a unicorn. Like, Richard, where did you get that? Guys, I prayed, I meditated, I inquired. I said, okay, so did you humble yourself? Probably. Sorry, Richard, for using your name, but I'm really saying about myself.
No, you're
So
fine. Keep going.
Yeah. So somebody must have humbled themselves and not allow their ego to always get in the way.
So you have to humble yourself to expect a prayer answer.
It would help. I would say it would help. Unless, it's like this, Joel. I'm just talking out loud. If somebody already knows what they want, then why are they asking the question to the universe then? They already know what they want. Then just do the work.
More importantly, if we're going to equate the universe with God, the Bible says that when you pray, God already knows what you're going to pray for.
Again, and of course you relate that with the heart. One's intentions, their heart. You know, like I said, when people go to things that do a lot of backbiting, they don't realize how easy the heart is easy to influence.
Wow. So you're constantly reminding me of things. That reminded me of scripture somewhere in James, I think it was. Richard, you're talking about how the heart and the tongue are untamed. Mm-hmm. It starts a fire. Yeah, I forget the exact verse. Maybe you can help.
The word I use for myself is diarrhea of the mouth. I have diarrhea of the mouth.
My brain does not keep the abstracts of numerical sequences.
Well done, Richard.
So I would have to look it up for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, like just the concept. You're reminding me of the concept. Yeah. The tongue is like a fire. Mm-hmm. Sets things on fire.
But we do break our silence in many variations. Whether you write about it or talk about it, you're breaking one's silence.
I'm going to look it up. It's important enough.
So I want to in this short pause present the idea that someone could start a stream, and we can guide humans over to that stream if they so desire. So if anyone wanted to start a stream, but I'm getting a little bit where I need to go do other things. So I want to kind of encapsulate, wrap up, put a bow on the ideas you guys are throwing back and forth right now.
James 3:6. I'm probably gonna go to sleep. It's 2:30 in the morning for me. 2:30 a.m. Oh goodness.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Joel. I'm going to sign off, actually.
Bye.
How does?
Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it. You know, despite your self-deprecation, I thought that what you said, all of it, was very understandable. And even if I can't agree with all of it, I can at least agree with some good percentage.
True. For me, respect is always when we just hear each other. The term of I agree or disagree, that's more or less the self revealing itself. I agree. I disagree. I said, I'm just sharing out loud. Nobody picks up. You know, unless we can actually say that we can experience each other's senses, then what are we really agreeing upon? The sound?
Ourselves.
Yeah,
exactly. We're agreeing within ourselves.
Yeah, our storyline. And it might resonate. I like the word when people use the word resonate. But again, it's one of those things. The best we could do for each other, this is my interpretation, is just hear each other out. That's it.
Right on. Okay. And truly try to hear. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming by anytime, brother.
Yeah, the concept of hearing externally and listening from within. Ciao, my friend.
To truly listen. To have ears that can hear.
Yeah, that is to dismiss one's own bias, which requires humility, and to be humble, one must be humbled by some other entity. You cannot self-humble. And I think that's what happened to me. I was fully humiliated. And that's what made me able to learn. And before that, I was just a very proud student who was incapable of learning, I tell you. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. and the tongue a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind, but the tongue no man can tame, an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless the God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not be so. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet and bitter water? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries? Either a vine figs? So no mountain both yields salt, water, and fresh. Love it. So be ye single-minded, knowing only one thing, and follow that one thing, be it true. I wrote that myself just now.
Nice. I think this illustrates even somebody who doesn't necessarily follow or walk with Christ still knows the truth, or at least can still speak the truth.
Yes. I find it very, very self-defeating when someone claims, "Oh, there's no true thing in the Bible." Really? Really? Because read that.
That's called religious bias. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Even if you just read of the human observations, I'm sorry, these things are not lies. These things are true of us. Okay, wrap it up, Joel.
Well, I was going to ask, did anybody volunteer to restream? I don't know if I'm going to keep going or not, but
It seems no one's interested in that right now with this group.
I am not having thoughts of wrapping up. Let me think. I don't know. I always appreciate listening to you, whether I get to participate or not, Richard. You are a very blessed man, regardless of what you think. And I'm always very thankful to you and to the Lord and to even all your people that join in chat or just here. I'm always feeling edified. I've never seen a bad stream from your channel, so I'm very thankful. And thanks for having me.
There have been times I've had to work toward edification instead of diminishment in some participants that have been on the channel. But on the whole, you're right. This community is for edification, and we're pretty good at it, I think. And I'm not in denial of the blessings I've been given. I'm only denying not that they exist, but that I earned them somehow. I did not.
By the
I
way,
have the same.
Odin, that was me saying no skill issue, not Richard. Never mind. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify something.
It's perfectly appropriate.
Yeah. I was going to share, Richard. I have the same problem that I often, whatever emo moments, I've had a tremendous life, good and bad. And whenever I try to, be annoyed or frustrated, like Domenico was talking about, complaining about things. And I think back and I look at where I'm at now. It's just like, I've got all the basics. What am I really complaining about?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that in of itself is a blessing. I'm constantly being blessed. I'll like right now. He was talking about looking for work. I'm looking for work. I've been out of work for 2 months now. It's starting to get rough. I'm constantly asking, give me a job. I'm begging for a job, and I have prayers where God's like, he just sometimes just seems to change my emotions. Sometimes he'll change the stress or the worry, whatever you call it, and I'm just happy all of a sudden, right? just feel cheerful for no logical reason. And so it's just, I don't know. I've got a point here somewhere that I'm not even thinking of what I'm trying to say, other than God's constantly blessing us, whether we realize it or not sometimes.
Sometimes with our short vision, it's hard to see what that blessing is going to be. Very hard. And sometimes a person might think they're being cursed. Harple Blues wrote, Richard, can your God know what you're going to pray for? Here's why he's saying that. I don't believe that God has a consciousness. I believe that the Elohim, the angels of God, the lords of the Yehovah, they have consciousness. So I don't think that God can know what I'm going to pray for, but I do believe that like there are familiar, meaning having a familial relationship with you, demons, there are also familiar angels. Now, both of those entities would have kept up with a person's life and stayed updated in changes throughout the life of that person since they had consciousness. That'd be the job of it. So do I think that, like my mom or my dad, when I was a child, could predict what I would do in some given situation, what I would think of it, how I would react, what I was likely to do, and know me that way? Yes. I think mom and dad were able to do that way too accurately for my tastes, and I received punishments and blessings sometimes from them. Of course, I didn't mind the blessings, but in that same way, a familiar angel would know me. So yes, knows what I'm going to pray. After all, there'd be no point in pointing out that there's familiar demons if there were no familiar angels. It would be the only thing that knew you.
I am reminded of Jesus telling I think it was disciples, that God knows our prayers before we ask. But with what you just said, Richard, it kind of dawned on me, it's not really relevant. It doesn't matter if God knows what we want to pray or not. God's omnipotent. God knows everything. God knows all the prayers, and God has, I don't know, not only does he have all knowledge, but for the most part, prayer is more for us. It's more for our own benefit, more so than trying to, convince God or even ask God. It's not asking God. It's just, I've had a lot of, I don't know about you, Richard, I've had a lot of prayers where, especially the really long ones, where I'm talking to God about things, and at the end of it, it's like, I already knew, it was like God just like reminded me of something that I already knew, and I'm like, Lord, why did I even, why do I even bother to ask you? And he's like, because I just like you. I like for you to ask. I like for you to think.
I like to read. I like to read something, if I may. Really
Go ahead.
quick. You relax on a bus not knowing the driver. You relax on a plane not knowing the pilot. Why not relax in life knowing God is in control? I think both of you will get a kick out of that.
It's a good question. Harple Blues wrote. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's not even a question. It's it's a motivational quote, or not even a quote because nobody really said it, but it's it's basically saying that why don't you should relax because God is in control of your life. That's literally the point of it.
I understand the question is rhetorical based in the two prior statements. So I took it literally a question, but that doesn't mean it escapes me that it's a rhetorical question. Harple Blues wrote, Richard, does your God know everything? And I see your point. And the reason I don't argue Joel is because Joel is using the word God a very, very specific way, and so am I. And those two don't match. But that doesn't mean we're referring to something unheavenly. we're both referring to the heavenlies, and how he perceives God is not a salvific issue any more than how I perceive God is a salvific issue. So could I review with Joel the Christian conception of God versus biblical claims, and what is most reasonable to believe that the Bible is actually claiming from within itself? The entirety of the argument falls as follows: the difference between the Father and God. Well, in Scripture, more than once, like in the story of Moses and his brother Aaron, that Aaron can speak publicly without stumbling, but Moses cannot. So God speaks to Moses, and Moses speaks to Aaron, and to Aaron, Moses is God. Does that make a person in the ancient Near East named Moses God? Well, no, it doesn't. But what it's saying instead is that Moses is an accurate representation of God to teach Aaron. So to Aaron, he is God. So there you go. Whether Joel is speaking of the actual God and I'm saying that angels teach me of God, there's no difference there.
The messenger, a conduit of God.
Right.
I was going to add, if I may, for Harple, that regardless of any, and I agree with you, with any doctrinal differences, every Christian in and out of the Bible changes. We all learn. We all, all of us are wrong at one point or another. Even Jesus at the Book of Revelations of the 7 churches, pointed out a lot of the errors that they had from the first churches.
Sure.
The only whatever criteria, I guess, for anything is, again, what Jesus said in Matthew 7. It's if you know him or not. If you know Jesus, then that's all that matters. And I think Jesus does speak to us or teach us or lead us in different directions because that's how relationships are,
Yeah, and I hold that if the life of the Christ Jesus, that is translated, because we shouldn't leave these words untranslated. If the christened one who announces that Jehovah is salvation, which were the same words twice, believe it or not, fulfills that job role by actually doing that, then they are indeed the Christ Jesus. And the flip side of that same coin is that if someone else had done it, they'd be the Christ Jesus. Okay? So the Bible is saying the fulfillment of the prophecies, the fulfillment of the law is the Christ Jesus. And he's the only one that does it. Well, where does that leave everyone else? Well, dangling in the wind a little bit, actually. So is it horrible that we're all not Christ Jesus? Well, then he'd be no salvation. So there you go. Okay, thank you so much, Joel. You're always a welcome participant. I appreciate what goes on in your brain and the way that you express it within my own biases and what I think you are. How do you like that?
I laughed, but I couldn't hit the unmute button quick enough, and I said, likewise.
Likewise. All right, brother, kick yourself out the door because I don't do that. Peace and respect to you all. Thank you so much for joining me, and I want you to know that I truly do look forward to the day that in heaven we are all very long-term great friends.
Forever.
Yes.
Good night, sir. Or morning.